Hello everyone, I know you are going to use this video for falling asleep, so before that, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you are from. Also, what time is it? The girl in the photograph wasn't there the day it was taken. Mara stared at the image again, squinting. It was old, creased at the corners, sepia-toned, faded, but unmistakably hers. A family photo from 1998, taken in the front yard of the house they'd rented on Winter Hollow Road that summer. Her mom, her dad, her older brother Jonah. And there, between her and Jonah, a fourth child, a girl, pale, eyes too dark, smiling wide. A smile that didn't match anyone else's. Mara had no memory of her, not one, and neither did her parents. That was the start. It had arrived in the mail with no return address, no note, just the photo in a yellowed envelope. Mara hadn't thought about that house in years. But something about the photo pulled her in. Unease prickled under her skin. It wasn't just the mystery girl. It was the house behind them, barely visible in the background. The windows looked darker than they should have been. The porch sagged like it was tired of holding secrets. And one other thing. In the upper window, above the girl's shoulder, there was someone, or something, watching. When Mara was 11, they'd left Winter Hollow in the middle of the night. She remembered that clearly. The sound of her mother crying, her father yelling, Jonah vomiting in the back seat, her own fingers clawing into her thighs to stay awake because, even at that age, something inside her screamed that sleep was dangerous. But after they left, her parents never spoke of it again. Not once. Not in the calm days. Not during the fights. Not when the nightmares came. It was as if that summer had been scrubbed from their lives. A quiet pact we don't talk about Winter Hollow. Now, 20 years later, the photo broke the silence. Mara was 31 and recently divorced. She lived alone in a city that never quite felt like home. The envelope had arrived on a rainy Tuesday, and 3 hours later, she was still sitting on the floor, staring at the photo, tracing the face of the strange girl with one trembling finger. She called her mother first. No answer. Then Jonah. Straight to voicemail. It was only when she tried her father that someone picked up. "What did you say?" he asked, voice raw. "I found an old photo," she said slowly, her pulse hammering. "From Winter Hollow. Do you remember?" The line went dead. She stared at the screen, called again. Nothing. That night, she couldn't sleep. The shadows in her apartment stretched too far. She kept hearing soft clicks, like someone tapping on glass. But every time she looked, the windows were empty. At one point, she caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror, and for a split second, just a blink, there was someone standing behind her. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. The next day, Mara drove. She didn't pack. She didn't make calls. She didn't tell anyone. She just got in her car and drove east for 7 hours until the road curved and narrowed into a forgotten place called Winter Hollow. It hadn't changed. The trees leaned over the road like eavesdroppers. The wind moved funny here, too soft, like breath on the back of the neck. And the house was still there, half swallowed by woods. Its roof slouched and porch cracked like broken teeth. It looked smaller now, but meaner. Mara parked by the rusted gate and stepped out. The air was still. The kind of still that made sound feel like a crime. Her footsteps crunched on dead leaves as she approached the house. She thought of calling Jonah again, maybe even turning around, but her feet had other plans. She pushed the gate open. It moaned. Inside, the air was stale. Not dusty, not musty, just wrong. As if the house had been sealed in time and left to rot quietly. Her boots sank into warped floorboards. Cobwebs brushed her face. But everything was intact. The furniture, the curtains, the photos on the wall. She stared at a picture of her family in the living room. A different one. Same house, same summer, same strange girl. In this one, she was holding Mara's hand. A rush of nausea surged through her. She grabbed the wall to steady herself and heard a creak above her. Someone was upstairs. She froze. And then, faintly, barely there, a whisper, "You came back." Her skin went cold. She turned toward the staircase, every muscle in her body screaming not to go up. But she moved anyway. Step by step. The second floor was darker, as if light itself avoided this place. The hallway stretched longer than she remembered. There were 4 doors. One of them, far at the end, was slightly open. From inside came the sound of humming, a child's voice. She walked toward it, one shaky breath at a time. The room was empty. Dust swirled in the dim light from the window. An old toy box sat in the corner, lid open. A broken doll slumped on the floor, and a new photograph on the bed. She picked it up. It was of her, standing in this room holding the doll, taken from the doorway. She was older. This was today. This moment. There was no camera. No one else in the house. The floorboards creaked behind her. She turned fast, too fast, and saw movement just as it vanished down the hall. A blur, pale skin, dark hair. The girl, she was real. Mara chased after her, heart in her throat. The girl turned into another room, her old bedroom. Mara burst through the door, and stopped. The walls were covered in writing, over and over, scratched into the plaster. Deep into the wood beneath, "I'm still here." Blood had been used for some of them, and in the center of the room a circle of toys, all old, all hers. In the middle sat the girl. She looked up, eyes black, lips curved in that too wide smile. "You remembered," she said. Mara couldn't speak. The girl stood. She was taller than she should have been. Wrong, somehow. A child's body, but not a child. Not anymore. "They never should have left me," she said. Mara stepped back. The floor groaned. A wind whipped through the room even though the windows were closed. "You're mine now," the girl whispered. The door slammed shut. Mara woke up outside, on the ground, in the dark. The house loomed in front of her, still and silent. Her phone was gone. Her car keys too. And on the windshield of her car, propped up with a stone, was the photograph. But now it had changed. She was gone from it. So was Jonah. Only the girl remained. Smiling, inside the house, a light flickered on. Upstairs, someone was watching. The photograph burned in Mara's hand. Not literally, but close. The chill that traveled up her arm felt deeper than cold, like something was moving under her skin. She stared at it again, desperate for a clue, a detail she hadn't seen. But the truth screamed in her face. She was gone from the image. So was Jonah, her parents. The only face left was the girl's, clear, centered, as if she'd always been the only one who mattered. And the light, upstairs. Someone, or something, was still inside. Most people would have driven away. Mara knew that. Her legs trembled. Her throat ached. Her whole body begged her to leave. But the photo said she didn't belong out here anymore. Somehow, the house had taken her in again. And if she didn't go back inside, she'd never get out for real. She opened the car door. Empty. Her keys weren't there. Neither was her phone. Even the emergency knife she kept under the driver's seat was gone. But the glove box was open. She hadn't opened it. Inside, a tape recorder. Old, heavy. One of those chunky gray ones with the orange play button you had to push hard. Taped to the top, a note in shaky handwriting. "Play this inside the echo room." She didn't write that. She didn't know what the echo room was. But her hands moved on their own. She took the recorder, shut the door, and crossed the yard again. This time the front door was open, just a crack. Welcoming. The house was darker than before. Not night dark, deep dark. Like the light had been eaten. As she stepped inside, the floor whispered beneath her boots. The shadows pressed close. She passed the living room, empty now, the photos gone. The kitchen had a strong smell, rotten milk, sour fruit, old meat. But when she peeked inside, there were no dishes, no trash, nothing. It was like the smell came from the walls. She moved toward the staircase. That's when she heard it, the laughter. High, distant, echoing through the halls like it belonged in a playground. But it was warped, stretched, as if someone had taken the sound of a happy child and twisted it just enough to make your stomach drop. It came from upstairs, from the echo room. She didn't know how she knew which one it was, but her feet led her, past her old bedroom with the scratched-up walls, past the broken bathroom door, to the last door on the right. It hadn't been open before. Now it gaped like a mouth. Inside a single bed, a dresser, a cracked mirror, and something carved deep into the wooden floor, sharp and frantic. ECHO. The letters spiraled out from the center like a trap. She stepped in, tape recorder clutched to her chest. The floor groaned beneath her. The door creaked and slammed shut behind her. She turned, grabbed the knob. It didn't budge. Locked. Her breath clouded the air. Cold seeped through the walls. She hit play on the tape recorder. Nothing, just hiss. Then a voice. Not hers. Not her parents. Not Jonah. "You left me in the dark," it said. A child's voice, the girl. The one from the photo, but older, sharper. Like she'd aged and cracked and forgotten how to sound real. "You promised you'd come back." Mara backed away from the recorder. The walls were shifting. She could swear it. The shadows crawled like ants. The mirror pulsed. "Now you have to listen." The door behind her groaned. The mirror cracked, just a hairline fracture, but it ran right through her reflection's eye. Then the tape changed. A second voice. Her mother. "Don't let her in." Then static. Then Jonah. "She's not what you think she is." Another voice. Her father. Whispering, barely audible, "We were wrong to stay." Mara's knees buckled, because she remembered now. Pieces, not whole, flashes, not memories, but enough. That summer, 1998, Jonah had been sleepwalking, every night, always to the same room, the echo room. They thought it was just a phase. Until they found the drawings. Until Mara started sleepwalking too. Until the scratching noises came from inside the walls. Until the girl appeared. She hadn't spoken then. Just stood in corners under the bed outside the windows, always watching. And one day, she'd been in the family photo. Just like now. That night, her parents packed and ran. Left everything, even the girl. But maybe the girl never left. The recorder clicked off. Silence. No, not silence. Breathing. Behind her, she turned slow, against every instinct, and saw the girl again. But not the same girl. Her body was still small, but her eyes too old. Her face was cracked, like porcelain. Her mouth hung open too wide, too empty. "I waited," she whispered. Mara stumbled back, tripped, hit the dresser. The mirror shattered. "I waited so long." The girl stepped forward and split. Down the center, like paper tearing. Inside, darkness, deeper than night, moving, reaching, hungry. Mara screamed, and the walls screamed back. She woke up on the bed. It was morning. Light streamed through the window. The echo room was empty. No recorder, no writing, no broken mirror. Just dust and silence. And on the floor, a child's drawing. Crayon. Her and the girl. Holding hands, she ran. Down the stairs. Out the door. Through the yard. Into her car. The keys were back. So was her phone. The photo. Gone. She didn't question it. She started the engine and drove. She didn't look back. But the woods on either side of the road looked different. Thicker. Closer. As if the trees were leaning in to watch her leave. And far behind her, in the attic window of the house, a small face. Smiling. They buried the past, but the past had teeth. Mara didn't sleep after she left Winter Hollow. She drove until her hands cramped on the wheel, and her eyes blurred into the yellow blur of highway lines. She didn't stop for gas until the warning light blinked orange, and even then, she left the engine running, because something told her if she turned it off, it might not start again. It wasn't until she reached her apartment, gray and dead in the dawn light, that she finally let herself breathe. But peace wasn't waiting inside. Her front door was ajar. Mara froze. Her heart thudded once, Twice her keys trembled in her hand. She lived alone. Always had. Ever since the divorce, she made sure every window was locked, every camera working. She never left the door unlocked, and yet, there it was, hanging slightly open, like it had been waiting for her. She pushed it wide. The place was untouched, silent, normal. No signs of forced entry, no mess, no broken glass or shuffled papers. But something had changed. On her kitchen table sat an old, black cassette tape. No label, no case, just tape. She knew before she even touched it. It was from Jonah. They hadn't spoken in over a year. Not since the last fight. He'd called her a coward. She'd called him a lunatic. He was obsessed with what happened at Winter Hollow. Always digging, always asking questions. He thought the house was cursed, said it had left a mark on them both. And now, he'd sent her something, or someone had. She plugged in her old stereo. The tape clicked into place, and played. Jonah's voice crackled from the speakers. "Mara," he said, "if you're hearing this, I'm gone." Her stomach flipped. "I don't mean dead," he added quickly. "Not yet, not exactly." A pause, a breath. Static hummed around his words. "You need to know the truth, not the version they told us, not the parts we remembered, the full thing." Another pause. "She was real, Mara. She is real. And she's not just tied to that house, she's tied to us." The words hit like ice water. Jonah's voice grew quieter. "She followed me," he whispered. "All this time. Every place I moved. She never stopped. I thought if I went back, maybe I could finish it. Maybe I could talk to her. But she doesn't talk anymore, Mara. She screams." The tape glitched, loud static, like screaming in reverse. Mara clutched her head as it buzzed. Then his voice returned. "Whatever happens to me, don't go back in alone. Don't trust the house. And whatever you do, don't listen to her voice. Not all the way." Another crackle. "She's learning how to sound like us now." Then silence. Mara yanked the tape out. Her breath came fast. The edges of the cassette were warm. Not from the stereo, from something else. Like it had been touched too recently. She turned to the window and screamed. A reflection. In the glass, not her own. The girls, staring, smiling. By the time she spun around, the room was empty. The hallway was empty. The bathroom, bedroom, closet. But inside her laundry basket, something small and heavy waited under her clothes. Another tape, labeled, this time in her own handwriting. I lied. She didn't remember writing it. Didn't remember ever owning another tape. She stared at it for a long time, then played it. Her own voice. Monotone, lifeless, distant. "I told myself she wasn't real," her voice said. "I told myself I dreamed it all. But I remember now." Static. "I remember the blood in the tub. The way Dad shook when he thought we weren't looking. The thing under my bed whispering in someone else's voice." Static again. "I remember her eyes." The voice changed. Lower. "I remember the night Jonah screamed, and no one came." Mara slammed the stop button. No more, no more. Her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "I told you not to listen." She dropped the phone. Seconds later, another buzz. Another text. "He's still in the house. Jonah." Mara's heart seized. It couldn't be real. He was gone. He'd vanished a year ago. No note. No goodbye. Just left his apartment and disappeared. No one found anything, no clothes. No money trail. Not even the car. Now this. She wanted to run. But something inside her cracked open. A need deeper than fear. If he was alive, trapped somehow, she had to go back. Mara packed. Flashlight, water, salt, batteries, a hammer, a knife, and both tapes. She drove as the sky darkened. Winter Hollow welcomed her again, like a mouth closing. The house was waiting. Same broken gate. Same slumped roof, but the front door was wide open now. Inside, the smell was worse. Rotted copper and damp ash. She stepped into the dark. This time, the floor didn't creak, it sighed. The layout was the same, but something was different. Wrong angles, longer shadows. The walls seemed closer together than before. She called out, "Jonah." No answer, but a sound from upstairs. A soft clatter, like a chair scraping gently across the floor. She followed. Every step felt like a dare. Upstairs was colder, sharper. The hallway was too long. It felt like walking into a throat. She passed her old room. Empty. The echo room. Shut. She turned the knob. Inside, a figure. Slouched in the corner. Tied to a chair. Jonah. His head snapped up when she entered. Eyes wide. Pale. "Don't come in," he croaked. Too late. The door slammed behind her. He struggled against the ropes. "It's not me," he said. Mara froze. "What?" His eyes darkened. "It's not me," he whispered. From behind her, a giggle. She turned. Another Jonah, standing in the doorway. Smiling, and then his face shifted, just a flicker. A ripple. His mouth stretched, black eyes. The girl. She stepped forward. Then another giggle. Behind her, a mirror. Not just cracked, shattered. And inside the shards, not her reflection. Herself. Dozens of versions. All screaming. All reaching. All trapped. The room pulsed. Mara screamed. And the house screamed back. Lights burst. Walls shook. Jonah, the real one, howled behind her, thrashing against his ropes. "Get out!" He roared. But there was no out. The echo room was closing. And the girl, she smiled wider. Mara's hands shot to her ears as a voice pierced the air. Her own voice, but layered, wrong, twisted. "Stay." Darkness swallowed the room. And then, silence. Mara woke up on the floor, alone, again. But this time something had changed. The chair was empty. No Jonah, no tapes. Just a single message scratched into the wall, deep and fresh. "You brought her back." When Mara was a child, her mother used to tell her, "If you hear someone calling your name at night, don't answer. It might not be someone you know." Back then, she thought it was just one of those strange warnings parents gave to keep kids from wandering. Like, don't talk to strangers, don't take candy from white vans. But now, back in the house on Winter Hollow, she understood, because someone was calling her name, from inside the walls. "Mara." The voice was low, wet, like it had crawled up from a throat that hadn't worked in years. She stared at the wall where it came from, peeling wallpaper. Water damage. Claw marks. Not scratches, claw marks. "Mara, come play." It was a child's voice this time, higher, teasing. Sweet on the surface, but underneath, something broken. Something hungry. She took a step back. Her foot hit something soft. A stuffed rabbit. Old. Moldy. One eye missing. She hadn't seen it when she entered the room. She hadn't brought it in. The message on the wall was still fresh. "You brought her back." Her fingers brushed the letters. The grooves were sharp. Deep. Too deep for a finger. A knife, maybe. Or a claw. She turned in a slow circle, heart in her throat. No more Jonah. No more echo room. Just the rabbit. The voice. The pulsing sense that something was watching her from the other side of the wall. Then, another sound, faint, behind her. Click. Like a camera shutter. She spun around. Nothing. She checked her pockets. Both tapes were still there. But now there was a third, one she'd never seen. Smaller. No label. She didn't remember bringing a third tape. Her skin crawled as she held it. And from the hallway, down the stairs, came the soft, repeating hum of a tape recorder already playing. She followed the sound. Down the staircase. Through the dead, silent kitchen. Into the basement door. It was open now. A black mouth waiting. She descended. One creaking step at a time. The air thickened. Wet. Each breath felt like it came with its own weight. The hum grew louder. And when she reached the bottom, she found the recorder, sitting in a pool of something dark. Red. Thick. Old. It played the tape she hadn't inserted yet. And from it came a voice Mara had never heard before. The third voice. Not Jonah. Not her. Something else. It rasped. "You let her in." Then a pause. "I watched you from the mirror. I stood behind your brother. I whispered when you dreamed." The voice was everywhere now, echoing off the walls, sliding under her skin. "I wore your face once." Mara backed toward the stairs. But there were no stairs, only wall. The entrance had vanished, and the light from above, gone. The recorder clicked off. Silence. Mara stood frozen, knees shaking. Then the basement changed. She didn't hear the shift, she felt it. Like the house was holding its breath. Then, a child's hand burst from the floor. Mara screamed. Another hand followed, and then the girl pulled herself up through the wet concrete like it was water. No sound. No scream. Just movement, and her eyes, all black. No whites. No pupils. Just void. She opened her mouth, and Mara heard her own voice come out. "You don't belong here anymore." The lights flickered once, twice, then failed completely. Mara ran, hands outstretched in the dark, slamming into walls, scraping knuckles raw. She found the wall where the stairs used to be, still gone, but something else had replaced it. A mirror, old, tarnished, and in it, not her reflection, but herself, smiling, eyes black. Mara staggered backward, another voice in her ear now, whispering so close it felt like breath. "I'm already wearing you." She spun and swung her flashlight blindly, cracking it against stone, wood, anything, but it barely lit a few feet in front of her. The mirror pulsed, like a heartbeat. The glass rippled. And then she saw Jonah. Not in the room, in the mirror. He stood in the background, looking over his shoulder, mouthing something she couldn't hear. A warning. Then the glass cracked, long, jagged down the center. The flashlight flickered and went out. In the dark, something grabbed her wrist, cold fingers. Bone thin, she shrieked. Pulled, but it didn't let go. The hand crawled up her arm, slow and certain, until it pressed flat against her chest, and she felt it. The second heartbeat, not hers. Something inside her. Beating, matching rhythm, trying to sink. She bit down a scream and reached for the knife in her jacket. Plunged it into her own shoulder. Pain exploded. The hand vanished. She collapsed onto the cold floor, sobbing, panting, bleeding, but alone. The mirror was gone. So was the girl. So was the basement. She woke up in her car. Daylight burned her eyes. The blood soaked through her jacket. The knife still in her shoulder. But she was outside, alive. Somehow, her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "You're not done." She looked up at the house. All windows dark. All doors shut. Dead quiet. But she knew. Something had come out with her. Some things follow you quietly. They don't knock. They don't scream. They just wait. And eventually, when you're tired enough, distracted enough, they whisper. "I've always been here." It had been 3 days since Mara left Winter Hollow. She hadn't gone home. Couldn't. Instead, she holed up in a roadside motel 20 miles away. She kept the lights on, the curtains shut, the television blaring static on low volume just to drown out the silence. She hadn't removed the bandage from her shoulder. The wound was healing too fast. That wasn't normal. Her phone buzzed constantly, but there were no messages, no notifications, just buzzing, as if something was trying to get in. Through the device, through the glass, through the line, she turned it off. Still buzzed. She crushed it with the heel of her boot. Only then did it stop. Mara sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the 2 tapes she still carried in her bag. The third one, the one that played on its own in the basement, was gone. She never found it. Not in her pockets. Not in the car. Not in the blood-soaked jacket she'd burned in the motel dumpster. But she could still hear it. In her dreams. That voice. "I wore your face once." She had to find Jonah. Or at least find out what happened to him. The only place that might hold answers was a name she hadn't said in years. Dr. Evelyn Goss. The family therapist who'd worked with them the summer after Winter Hollow. She was the only person her parents ever let. Even a little. They never said much. But Mara remembered her mother's red eyes after every appointment. The way her father kept rubbing his jaw, like it hurt to speak. If anyone knew the truth, it was her. Dr. Goss had retired, but she still lived in the area. Mara found the address online. It was a farmhouse just outside Blithy's Corner. A crooked little town that sat under the weight of its own silence. The drive was short, but every mile felt stretched. Wrong. The air outside turned heavy. The trees started to slant, like they were trying to lean away from her. When Mara pulled up to the house, her stomach twisted. Something was off. The house looked like it had been abandoned for years. Paint flaked, windows dark, porch sagging. But the front door was wide open. She stepped out of the car, heart pounding, knife tucked at her hip. As she approached the house, a sound met her ears. Music. Old, scratchy. A record player stuck in a loop. Soft piano. A single note repeating. Over and over and over. She stepped through the open door. The air was cold. Inside, dust covered every surface. Bookshelves sagged. Cobwebs danced in slow motion. And yet, the record played. Someone had been here. Recently. Dr. Goss. Mara called out. No answer. Just the piano note. Over and over. She followed it. The music came from a back room Mara didn't remember being part of the original floor plan. That's when it hit her. She'd been here before. Years ago. As a child, after Winter Hollow, this was Dr. Goss's home office. She'd sat in that chair. She'd drawn pictures of the girl. She just didn't remember this room. It wasn't here back then. But now a door at the end of the hallway yawned open. The music spilled out, louder now. Distorted, she stepped inside. The walls were wrong. Too tall. Too narrow. The furniture looked stretched, like it had been made for something almost human. The piano was in the corner, spinning a warped record. The keys moved on their own. One note. Over and over. And in the center of the room, a mirror, no frame. Just a standing slab of glass, taller than her, bolted to the ground with rusted spikes. And on the other side of it, not a reflection. A copy. Mara. But wrong. The eyes were black. The smile didn't stop at the edges of the mouth. It curled. And the voice that leaked through the mirror wasn't hers. You never really left, it said. Mara backed away. From the shadows behind the mirror, a shape emerged. Thin. Tall. Wrapped in skin too tight. Eyes like pits. Mouth sewn shut. It carried something in its hands. A tape. It held it up to the mirror. And Mara's copy pressed her hands against the glass. The mirror breathed. The shape pushed the tape through. The glass rippled. The tape fell onto the floor at Mara's feet. Label, Dr. Goss. A sob caught in her throat. She reached down, touched it, cold, too cold. And then the mirror cracked. A long split, down the middle. Right through her copy's face. Blood leaked from the crack. Real blood. She ran, but back into the hallway. But the house had changed. The entry door was gone, replaced by more hallway. Each door she passed looked the same. Wooden, dark, identical knobs. Until one stood out, painted red. Scratched across it, she showed me too much. She pushed it open. Inside an office. Neat, organized, and Dr. Goss, sitting in her chair. Stiff, head tilted too far back. Eyes open. Mouth stuffed with tape. Literal cassette tape. Blood soaked her blouse. She had been dead a while. Mara screamed. The figure beside the body turned. She hadn't seen it. But it was there. Wearing Mara's face again. Only this time, it whispered. She remembered. Then it was gone. The door slammed shut. The light flickered, and a TV turned on in the corner. Static. Then a VHS image, young Mara, in the echo room. Sitting on the floor, talking to someone off screen. The girl. Their conversation was silent. But then the screen glitched, and a single word flashed, over and over. S-T-A-Y. Amara grabbed the tape labeled Dr. Goss from her pocket and crushed it against the floor. She didn't care what it said. She didn't need another warning. She needed out. She kicked the door. Once. Twice. The wood cracked. A third kick. Freedom. She stumbled into the hallway again. This time, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Even the music had stopped. Outside, the wind was still. The trees didn't move. The sun sat still in the sky. Too bright. Too frozen. She didn't start the car. She didn't need to. The engine started on its own, as if it knew. And on the dashboard sat the cracked mirror. Just the glass. no frame. And on it, written in fog, "You're not the only one wearing your skin." The skin didn't feel like hers anymore. Every time Mara looked in a mirror, it looked almost right. Same eyes, same mouth, same tired smudge under her left eye. But it was in the little things, the way she blinked too slowly, the way her reflection always smiled a second too late. She'd stopped checking altogether. But that didn't help. Now, the mirrors looked at her first. After she left Dr. Goss's house, if you could still call it that, Mara drove without knowing where she was going. Her hands gripped the wheel tight, steering through a fog that hadn't been there when she arrived. There were no street signs, no other cars. Even the gas stations looked like empty movie sets. She wasn't sure she'd ever left Winter Hollow. She wasn't sure there was a way out. And somewhere behind her, in the back seat, something was breathing. She stopped at a diner near the edge of nowhere. Lights flickering, door hanging crooked. The neon sign read E8, but only the E pulsed weakly in the dim. Inside, no staff, no music, no customers, only one booth occupied, by someone she hadn't seen in 20 years. Mom. Her mother looked up, older, paler, mouth a hard, tired line. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared. Mara stepped closer slowly, like approaching an animal that might bolt. "Is it really you?" she asked. Her mother opened her mouth, and out came static, loud, warbling, tearing sound. Mara reeled back, covering her ears. Her mother stood now, stiff, jittery. Her limbs moved like they didn't belong to her. She opened her mouth again. This time, her own voice came out. "I never left the house." Mara turned and ran, out into the fog. But the door she came through was gone. Only brick. She turned back. The diner was gone too, just open field. And a tree, only one, bent low, like it was listening to the ground. Beneath it, a hole, and beside the hole, Jonah. He sat cross-legged, covered in dirt. His eyes were wild, ringed in black. His fingernails broken. She dropped beside him, grabbed his shoulders. "Jonah!" "You're alive." He didn't respond, just stared into the hole. "I've been digging," he said. "For how long?" she asked. He shrugged. "The time's different down here." Down where? His eyes met hers, and there was something behind them, something watching him. "The hollow," he whispered. Mara followed his gaze into the pit. It wasn't deep, but it didn't end. The bottom wriggled, moved. It wasn't dirt. It was hair. Long, black strands twisting in slow underwater motion. A face surfaced. Not a full one, just an eye. Just a mouth. Grinning. "You can't bury something that's already inside you," Jonah said. Then, without warning, he jumped. Mara screamed, lunged to catch him, but the hole widened on its own, swallowed him clean. She heard no thud, no scream, just breathing from below. Then silence. Then a voice, Jonah's. "I found her." The wind shifted, brought with it a smell, rotted leaves, old blood, burnt paper. The tree above her bent lower, creaking. From the branches, something dripped. She looked up, a single shoe. Small, child-sized, dangling from a branch like fruit, and above it, high in the limbs, a girl in a white dress, swinging gently, smiling, mouth too wide. Mara ran, blindly. Fog closed in. Branches tore her arms. Thorns caught her jacket. She ran until her legs gave out. Collapsed in front of a structure. Not the house. Not exactly. A shed. Wooden, leaning. Too small for what it was hiding. The door opened before she touched it. Inside, warmth. And candles. And photographs. Hundreds. They lined the walls, the floor, the ceiling. All taken at Winter Hollow. All of her family. Different years. Different rooms. Different angles. Some were impossible. There was one of her sleeping in bed, taken from above. One of Jonah in the shower, steam still rising. One of her father crying in the hallway, shot from the inside of a closet. She staggered back, tripped, fell into something soft. A beadroll. Someone else had been staying here. She found a notebook. Faded leather. Inside, Jonah's handwriting. Page after page of frantic notes. She copies us. Not just faces. Voices. Memories. I saw Dad again. But he didn't blink. The mirrors show where she is, not where you are. If you break the mirror, she moves somewhere else. Then, on the last page, I buried the real me under the tree. The thing walking around. That's not me. Suddenly, the walls of the shed shifted. The photos began to curl at the edges. Peel. Then lift. One by one, they turned toward her. Faces in the photographs began to move. Smiles widening. Eyes following her. Mouths opening. And from them came a low, collective whisper. You've always been her. The candles blew out. Total dark. Mara fumbled for her lighter. Flicked it on. And in the tiny flame's glow, the photos had changed. All of them. Now they were only of her. But not her. Her face, yes, but wrong. Bent. Grinning, twisted in angles the human face shouldn't move. One hand shot out of the wall. Grabbed her wrist. She screamed. Tore free. Fled the shed. Outside, the world was different. Daylight, but the sky was too low. The clouds churned black and fast like ink in water. And the house was back. Closer than it had been. Like it had moved forward while she was distracted. The porch light flicked on. A single word scratched into the door, return. Mara took one step back. Then another. The wind behind her whispered. But it wasn't wind. It was her own voice. You can't keep pretending you weren't part of it. Then, footsteps behind her. Soft, careful. She turned. Jonah stood there. But his shadow bent the wrong way, and his smile was too wide. He looked like Jonah. He spoke like Jonah. But the shadow that spilled from his feet stretched toward the sun, not away from it. And when he blinked, it didn't look right. It looked like his eyes were turning inside out. Hey, sis, he said, calm, warm, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just climbed out of a bottomless grave. Mara didn't move, didn't breathe, because she knew now. There wasn't just one version of him out there. There were many. You're not real, she said. The Jonah thing tilted its head. That's what she said. Dr. Goss. Right before she stopped screaming, Mara backed away, toward the house. Toward the porch light, still flickering. The word scratched into the door, Radi-URN, seemed to shimmer in the daylight. A trap, a welcome. Both. Jonah stepped forward, and for a second his skin rippled. A face pushed up from underneath. Her face. Mara's. Smiling. She turned and ran. Not toward the house. Not toward the woods. But into the cornfield beside the shed. Tall, dry stalks swallowed her whole. No path. No sound. Just the hiss of dry leaves brushing against her arms. She ran until the field ended. And found a second house. Identical to the one on Winter Hollow. Same shape. Same windows. Same broken shingles. But upside down. Literally. The house was flipped roof down, like it had been dropped from the sky and stuck. And the door was wide open. Mara didn't go in. Not at first. She stood there, shaking, until she heard it again, that voice. Hers. Calling softly. Not from the house. From inside the walls, she turned. The corn behind her was gone. Only flat dirt, and the sky black now. Not night. Not clouds. Just black. A dome of dark stretching in all directions. The only thing left was the upside-down house. So she stepped inside. The floor, ceiling, really, creaked as she entered. Furniture nailed to it. Lights dangling from beneath her feet. Gravity still worked the same, but the house didn't. She moved through the hall, stepping around upside. Down chairs bolted to the floor above her. No pictures on the walls. No color. Everything gray, dusty, quiet. Until she reached the living room. There, nailed into the floor, was a mirror, and in it a hole. At first, she thought it was a trick, a flaw in the glass. But the hole wasn't in the mirror. It was in her reflection. A yawning, black circle where her mouth should have been. It didn't gape open. It peeled, and from it came a sound. A word, over and over. Let me in. She staggered back. The mirror cracked. Something spilled from the broken glass. Not shards. Teeth. Old, child-sized teeth. Dozens. They hit the ground like hail. She screamed. And then, the mirror smiled. No lips, just that hole, and then it started crawling. She ran. Up the stairs, which were down now, the house bent behind her. Literally, walls twisted, floors curved, rooms changed. One moment she was running through a hallway, the next she was in a child's bedroom. Her bedroom, from 1998, the same stuffed rabbit on the shelf, the same chipped blue dresser, and the girl, standing in the corner, back to her. Mara froze, then the girl turned her head, all the way around, like a gear wending the wrong way. Her face split down the middle, and from inside spilled black smoke. The smoke spoke. "You invited me." Mara grabbed the dresser, flung it at the figure, and bolted through the opposite door. It opened into a long, narrow corridor. Like the house had stretched itself to trap her. She kept moving. Shadows crawled alongside her. She passed a mirror, her reflection gone. She passed a window, only her eyes in the glass. She passed a picture frame, this time a photo of her. But in the background, 10 copies of the girl staring from behind trees. Each one smiling, each one closer than the last. She crashed into a room and slammed the door. It locked on its own, and the lights came on. One bare bulb swinging overhead. The room was lined with writing. The same phrase over and over, in red marker. "The mouth in the wall is mine now." And there, in the center of the room, a tape recorder, already playing. Her voice. Younger, from a therapy session. I heard her under the floorboards. A pause. "I think she's learning how to be people." Another voice. Dr. Goss. "You mean she copies them?" "No, child," Mara says. "She learns how to be them." And then, scratching, live, not from the recorder, from the wall behind her. She turned. A crack opened in the drywall. 2 fingers pushed through. Then a second hand, small, gray. Then a mouth. No face, just a mouth wider than it should be, teeth like pins. It whispered, "I need more skin." Mara backed away, but the floor was already pulling her down, like quicksand. No, like breath. As if the house had lungs and she was being inhaled. She screamed and grabbed the swinging bulb. Ripped it down, darkness, and in the dark, nothing moved. No more mouth, no more wall. She was back in the hallway standing, alone, except, at her feet, a photo, old, cracked, a family portrait, her family. But everyone's face was blurred, except the girl's. And written on the back, "Only one of us is real." The longer she stayed in this world, the wrong version of it, the less she remembered her own voice. Every sound she made seemed smaller, quieter, swallowed. But the girl's voice, it filled every corner. Mara began to suspect the girl didn't need a body. She just needed a listener. The photograph Mara found on the floor, the one with her blurred-out family, felt like a countdown. Every version of her parents, Jonah, even herself, had been scraped out of the image like someone didn't just erase them, they ate them. Only the girl remained, untouched. Her smile even sharper than before. And now that Mara stared closer, she noticed a detail she missed before. The girl was holding something behind her back, an ear. The next door Mara opened led her straight into a classroom. Old desks, dust-covered chalkboard, the sound of a metronome clicking somewhere in the background. Click, click, click. She'd never seen this room before in her life, but she knew it, because every desk had a photo of her on top. Different ages, different moments. All of them real, but all of them wrong. In one, she was 5, missing her front teeth, smiling too wide. In another, she was a teenager, but her eyes were black. The final photo was recent. Last week, asleep in her bed, mouth open, and the girl beside her whispering into it. At the chalkboard stood a teacher. Not a person, a shape, human enough to pass if you didn't look too close. Its back was to her. It wrote the same word over and over in chalk, Eistien. Mara stepped back, ready to bolt, but the door behind her was gone again. Only a wall. When she turned back, the teacher had turned too, no face. Just a hole where the mouth should be, and inside that hole, the tape recorder. It clicked on, played a whisper. You taught her to be silent, Mara. She taught you how to be heard. The walls of the classroom pulsed. The chalkboard melted down the wall. The sound of the metronome sped up. Click, 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 click. Then stopped. The silence was worse, because under the desks something moved hands. Too many hands. Small, reaching. Some of them had her old bracelets on them. Her old nail polish. Her scars. The girl wasn't copying her. She was collecting her. One version at a time. Mara sprinted across the classroom. One of the hands grabbed her ankle. She stomped hard, heard the crack of tiny fingers, didn't look back, found the door, a new one. Narrow, bent, covered in string, she pushed through, and fell. Not into another room. Into a tunnel, tight, wet, like crawling through a throat. The walls were pulsing. There were teeth embedded in them. She crawled fast, breath short, tears in her eyes. Then the sound returned. Not behind her, not ahead, inside her head, the girl's voice. Soft. You never asked who I was before you left. Mara screamed. Because you're not real? The voice chuckled. You say that like it matters. The tunnel spat her out into a room with no ceiling. Just stars. Too many stars. All blinking at the same time like they were watching her. The room was circular, stone, smooth, bare, except for a single chair in the center. And sitting in the chair, her Mara, but younger, from that summer, maybe 10 years old. She looked up and smiled. Finally, she said. Mara blinked. What is this? You're early, the child version of herself said. I'm not supposed to remember you yet. Mara stepped closer. The air was thick, warm. The stars blinked faster. You're not me, she whispered. The girl shook her head. I'm the version that didn't leave. The one they left behind. Her smile faded. You should have taken me with you. Mara backed away. This isn't real. But the girl stood up now, and behind her, the wall opened its eyes. Not holes, not windows, eyes. Hundreds of them, watching. And all of them looked like hers. The girl stepped forward, and her shadow unpeeled from her feet. It crawled toward Mara, slow, deliberate, like it had weight. And then, the girl opened her mouth. But there was no sound, none, only silence. But Mara heard it anyway, like it echoed inside her bones, inside her memories. You left me in the floorboards, the girl mouthed. You left me in the mirror. You left me in the house. Then, you owe me a voice. Mara fell to her knees. The stars went black, all of them. The only light now came from the girl's eyes. No longer black, now red. And the wall behind her whispered one sentence. From every eye at once, let her speak. Amara opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out, and from behind her, the tape recorder clicked on. Her voice, faint, crumbling, saying the same word over and over. Hollow. She woke up in a motel bed, sheets soaked in sweat. Lamp on TV playing white noise. She gasped, blinked, checked her hands. Still hers. Still real. Then turned. The other bed was slept in, indent on the pillow. A small white dress draped neatly over the chair, and the bathroom mirror, fogged up. Words written in it. I found your voice. The dress on the chair didn't move. But it didn't need to. Its presence filled the room like steam, clinging to Mara's skin, sinking into her lungs. It wasn't there when she fell asleep. She would have noticed. Just like she would have noticed the second toothbrush in the bathroom, or the twin set of muddy footprints across the motel carpet. Smaller than hers, and barefoot. Mara stared at the fogged mirror. I found your voice. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Because that message wasn't written with a finger. It was written with a tongue. The trail of it curved, dragged, thick in the glass. A smudge of red left behind. She wiped it away. And her reflection didn't follow. It stood still, blinking, out of sync. She turned her head right, it turned left. She raised a hand, it smiled. She didn't. And then it mouthed something she didn't say. Let me out. Mara backed away. The reflection stayed where it was, smiling wider. And then it stepped forward, through the glass. The sound was like paper tearing, a skin, thin rip that echoed in her teeth. The figure climbed out with impossible grace. Mara's exact face, Mara's exact body, but its movement was wrong, fluid where she was tense, silent where she was clumsy. She threw open the bathroom door and fled, but the motel room was gone. Now it was the hallway again, from the house. Endless. Flickering. Alive. The hallway stretched long and narrow, painted with old wallpaper that peeled in strips like dead skin. Every few feet was a door, each one marked with a name. Her mother, her father, Jonah, and the last one Mara. She tried her brother's door first, locked. Then her father's, bricks behind it. Then her mother's. It opened. But the inside wasn't a room. It was a mouth, lined with wet stone and curved teeth. It pulsed like it was breathing. From deep inside, her mother's voice cried out, "Mara, baby, don't come in here. She's not me. She's not." Chomp. Silence. Blood sprayed across the threshold. The door slammed shut on its own. And then, the door marked Mara opened wide, all on its own. Inside a bedroom. Not hers. A copy. The proportions were wrong. Too empty, too quiet. On the bed, her voice recorder, the one she hadn't seen since the basement. She picked it up. It started playing on its own. Click. Jonah's voice. "I found the truth. But you're not going to like it." Click. "I recorded everything. Before she found me." Click. "You want to know who she was before she wore that face?" Click. "You." She dropped the recorder. Something moved under the bed. Fast. Something with her breathing. Shallow, panicked, familiar. She crouched low and lifted the sheet. Nothing. Just darkness. Too dark. And then her own face. Grinning. Lunged from the shadows and whispered, "I don't want to go back." Mara screamed, scrambled to her feet, but the lights in the room died one by one. The door vanished. Only a mirror remained. And it was cracked. Badly. Not from outside, from within. The cracks pulsed. Something was trying to come through. She knew if she watched too long, it would make it. She turned her back, pressed her palms to her ears. But the voice came anyway. Inside. "You split me," it whispered. "Now we both get to live." She turned back toward the mirror. Her reflection no longer looked like her. It looked like the girl, but older. Growing. "You took the body," the reflection said, "but I kept the voice." Then, glass exploded. Mara fell to the floor, arms over her face, screaming. Shards rained down, but no cuts, no pain, just silence. When she looked again, the mirror was gone. In its place, a hallway, lit by candles. At the far end, a figure, small, wearing white, back turned. It didn't move when Mara approached. Didn't flinch when the floor creaked. She was only a few feet away when the girl spoke. "Which one of us do you think deserves to be real?" Mara couldn't answer. The girl turned around. Her face kept changing. From Mara as a child, to Mara as a teen, to Mara now, to something else. And then, finally, her face melted away entirely. Just a skull, a mouth stretched ear to ear. "Do you remember what you did?" the voice asked. And for the first time, Mara did. She remembered closing the door that summer. She remembered hiding in the closet. She remembered Jonah screaming her name as something pulled him into the wall. And she remembered what came after. What crawled into the room wearing his face. And what she let stay, because it promised to protect her, in exchange for a little silence. The girl nodded. "You said nothing, and so I became everything." And with that, the candles died. The hallway disappeared, and Mara stood in the middle of a black field. A single grave marked with a mirror. Her name on the headstone, and from below, knocking. The knocking didn't stop. Not once. Not even when Mara screamed. Not even when she begged. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Over and over, coming from under the grave marked with her name. A grave that hadn't been there before. But she knew what it meant. She wasn't standing on her own grave. She was standing on what was left of her voice. The dirt looked soft. Too soft. Like it was breathing. Each knock puffed dust into the air. It rose in little bursts, dry and desperate. Something down there was trying to get out. Or maybe trying to get back in. Mara stepped closer, fingers trembling. Every step toward that grave felt like a confession, because part of her, some quiet, locked away part, already knew what was beneath it. Not a body, not bones, just a mouth. She crouched, reached forward, paused. What if opening this meant letting it back in? What if she wasn't the one who escaped all those years ago? What if she was the one who stayed, and something else got out? The grave gave a low, rattling sound, a breath, and then a whisper. You stole her name. The dirt cracked. A pale hand pushed up through the soil. Thin, small, fingernails gone. Mara stumbled back, heart pounding in her throat. More of the hand appeared. A wrist. Then a forearm. Then a second hand followed, clawing at the surface. No strength. Just need. And then came the voice again. Her own voice. From the grave, let me back in. The field began to hum. Low and metallic. She looked up. There was no sky. Just mirrors. Hung in the air like stars. Hundreds of them. Each one reflecting her in different poses. Different expressions. But they were all wrong. Some had eyes that blinked out of sync. Some had mouths whispering even though she was silent. And one by one, they shattered. The moment the mirrors broke, the hand beneath the grave pushed through fully, and the girl rose, covered in dirt, mouth sewn shut, but still smiling, still her. An earlier version, from before the forgetting, before the trade. Mara stared at her own younger face, stitched and filthy, and felt her knees go weak. Because she remembered now. All of it. There had been a price. When Jonah disappeared into the wall that summer, when the house twisted into something else. Something whispered to her in the dark. If you stay quiet, you can leave. If you speak, you'll take his place. So she said nothing. Not when they left the house in the middle of the night. Not when her parents packed their things and refused to speak of it again. Not when Dr. Goss asked questions Mara almost answered. She buried it. And now that silence had grown teeth, the girl stepped forward, still voiceless, still her. And from the torn threads around her mouth, a wet sound began. A gurgle. Then a whisper that didn't match the lips. You're the echo. I'm the original. The field warped. The grave behind them split wide open. Not deep, but long. It stretched toward the horizon. Inside, photos, tapes, mirrors, and a chair. Someone was sitting in it. Mara couldn't see their face, until she did. Jonah, but older, beaten, starved, eyes black around the edges. He looked at her like he'd been watching for years. And then he said, "You let her out." The girl stepped beside Mara, placed a hand in hers. It was ice, dead cold. And then they traded places. No sound, no light, just a hard blink. Suddenly, Mara stood in the grave. The girl stood above, smiling. The stitches on her lips fell away, one by one, snapping like twine, and she whispered, "You remember now. That's all I needed." The grave filled in on its own, dirt pouring in from nowhere. Fast, Mara screamed, no sound. She clawed up, but her limbs moved slowly, like through water. The last thing she saw before the earth swallowed her, the girl, her, walking away, wearing her skin, smiling with her voice. She woke up in bed, warm, clean, morning sun pouring in through a window, city noise outside. It was her apartment, her real one. No motel, no field, no grave. The radio was on. Coffee brewed in the corner. Photos on the wall showed her with friends she didn't remember making. Texts buzzed on her phone. "You okay after the trip? Glad you're home. Let's catch up soon." She was home, but not herself. She walked to the mirror, looked into it, and her reflection blinked in time with her, moved like her, even smiled. But deep in the eyes, way behind the surface, something watched, not pretending, not copying, waiting. And on her bathroom wall, written in steam, were buried the wrong one. Mara's apartment was too perfect. The kind of perfect that only happens in dreams or commercials. Her toothbrush was in the right place. Her plants weren't dead. Even the fridge was full of food she didn't remember buying, things she liked, but hadn't eaten in years. And the pictures on the wall, smiling faces, friendly people, strangers, smiling next to her like they'd known her forever. She checked her phone. Text messages, dozens of them. Contacts saved under names she didn't recognize. Conversations she didn't remember having. All of them full of warmth. All of them talking to her, but not about her. Not one message mentioned anything real. Nothing about Jonah. Nothing about the house. Nothing about the girl. It was like the past had been paved over. Perfectly. Too perfectly. She scrolled deeper through her phone. Photos from the past few months. Vacations. Dinners. A man with his arm around her in some of them, but in every picture, the same smile. Too wide, too perfect. She zoomed in. On one photo, at the edge of the frame, half buried behind her shoulder, a mirror, and in the reflection, her. Staring, not smiling, eyes full of fear. She dropped the phone. Her breath came fast. This wasn't home. This wasn't safety. She'd been planted here. Replaced. She wasn't sure when it had happened. She wasn't even sure if she was still Mara. A knock at the door. 3 soft taps. Then a pause. 3 more. She froze. She hadn't told anyone she was home. Another knock. She approached the door slowly. Checked the peephole. No one. Just the hallway. Empty. But then another knock. From the bathroom mirror. She turned slowly. The mirror was fogged, but her reflection was clear. Too clear. Not a haze. Not a double image. Just another her. Looking back. And now she was smiling. The smile widened. And the reflection leaned forward and whispered a word. Skin. She stepped back, heart slamming. The light in the apartment dimmed. Slowly. Softly. Like someone was turning a dial down on her world. The walls stretched. The floor groaned. And her shadow didn't follow. It stayed still. Then it blinked. She ran. Grabbed her bag. Her keys. Bolted for the door. Out into the hall. But the elevator wasn't there. Just stairs. Narrow. Endless. Down and down and down. Every floor was the same. Flickering lights. Beige walls. No windows. She passed floor 1. Then 2. Then 6. She had to be dreaming. She had to wake up. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard she tasted blood. Still falling. Still moving. She finally hit bottom. A single door, old wood. Faded plaque. 1 Tietrahella Odo. Not an address. Just a name. She opened it. The house waited on the other side. Of course it did. And inside, it was full. Of her. Dozens of them. Sitting at a long table. Laughing. Eating. Each version looked slightly off. One blinked too much. One scratched at her skin until it bled. One whispered nonsense under her breath. And one just sat, staring at Mara like she'd been waiting. Her smile, calm, soft. But her eyes were filled with hate. You shouldn't be here, she said. I didn't invite you back. Mara's voice. But lower, like it had been buried. Who are you? Mara asked, her own voice cracking. The other her stood. Walked slowly around the table. Hands trailing along the backs of the other Mara's shoulders. I'm the one who stayed quiet, she said. The one who never left. The one who earned this. She circled Mara now. Close. So close Mara could smell the rot beneath her perfume. You were just the shell. I was always the soul. Mara stepped back. None of this is real. The girl laughed. The table of versions laughed with her, like echoes rippling across her skin. It doesn't have to be real, she whispered. It just has to be yours. Then, the lights went out, and a scraping sound filled the room. Chairs shifting, feet dragging, mouths opening. One by one, each version of her peeled, their skin cracking, sliding, revealing what lived underneath. Not flesh, not bone. Voice, woven into shapes, screaming. Mara ran, through doorways that turned to closets, down stairwells that looped back into bedrooms. The house shifted again. She passed mirrors where her reflection aged and rotted and cracked. In one, she had no face at all. In another, her reflection turned its head on its own. Smiled. then pressed its hand to the glass and whispered, "Let me wear you." She collapsed in a hallway, panting, bloody, alone. Then a door creaked open behind her. A small voice said, "Are you ready to give it back?" Mara turned. The girl stood in the doorway, the original, the one without a voice, the one who never screamed. She opened her mouth now, and from inside came Mara's voice. But not her words. Just one sentence, "You wore me long enough." And behind her, dozens of other mouths opened, all empty, waiting. Mara once believed the house had no memory, that it simply was, a place with shadows too long and doors that led nowhere. A shell. But now, seated in the dim hallway, heartbeat echoing like a drum in a funeral march, she understood. The house didn't forget. The house remembered everything, including her. She stood. Every inch of her body ached. Her hands shook. Her knees screamed. But the girl still watched from the doorway, mouth open. No tongue, no lips, just an empty hole. But Mara's voice spilled from it anyway. "You don't get to keep it forever," the girl whispered. "I only let you borrow it." Mara backed away. She wanted to argue, to scream, but the truth had been gnawing at her since the moment she woke up in that perfect apartment. This voice, her voice, had never really been hers. It was something she stole. Something that had been offered in fear and taken in silence. The price had just come due. The hallway behind her shifted. It stretched, pulled, groaned like the bones of something long dead waking up. Doors lined both sides now. Dozens, each one with a brass plate, each one with a name, not just hers. Dozens of names, some scratched out, some still gleaming. One said, "Mary Isa Raid," another T.H.E. Oren W.H.O. Ran, another T.H.E. Last E.C.H.O. and one Nino Nam J.U.S.T. Amara. She opened there a one. Inside nothing. No furniture. No wallpaper. Just a single mirror hanging on the far wall. But something scratched into the glass. Y-O-U Allen. She stared into it. Waited for the thing behind the glass to smile again. To twist her face. To speak without sound. But the mirror didn't show her this time. It showed Jonah. He was sitting in the corner of a dark room, rocking slightly, hands cupped over his ears, whispering the same word over and over. Mara, Mara, Mara. His eyes met hers in the reflection, and for the first time, she didn't see black behind them. She saw fear, real fear, and hope. He saw her. She stepped forward, reached for the glass, but the moment her fingers touched it, the mirror shattered, not outward, inward. Like something inside it had leapt away from her. A scream erupted from behind her. She turned. The girl, closer now. No longer standing, crawling, her arms pulled at the floorboards, her face dragging against the wood, and from her open mouth, a reel of magnetic tape unspooled. Mara's voice playing over it on loop. Every word she'd ever whispered in fear, every plea, every memory she'd buried. "Don't take Jonah. Please stop. I won't tell anyone." The hallway lights popped, one by one. Glass rained down like dust, and somewhere deep in the house, a heartbeat started, slow, loud, not hers, not Jonah's. The house itself was alive, and it was speaking, calling her name, over and over, Mara, low, gravelly, familiar. Her father's voice, then her mother's, then Jonah's, then hers. She ran. Again. The house changed under her feet. Hallways turned to stairwells. Stairwells turned into tunnels. She dropped into a crawl space, wet and lined with teeth. Not literal ones, but shapes carved into the walls resembling smiles. Long, hungry. Every inch of wall whispered as she passed. "She wore you well. You spoke so beautifully." Your silence made room for her song. She broke into a run again and found a door. Old. Rotted. It pulsed. Behind it whispers. Dozens. Hundreds. She pushed it open and stepped into a room of voices. They hung from the ceiling. No bodies, just mouths. Disembodied lips twitching, some moving, some screaming, all hanging like lanterns. Each one whispered a phrase. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. She made me. They left me. She took everything. And in the center of the room, tied to a chair, Jonah, eyes wide, mouth sewn shut. He looked at her, really looked, and she knew it was him. Not a copy, not a version, not a mask, but her brother. She stumbled toward him, reaching for the stitches at his mouth. He shook his head, violently. Eyes darting behind her, she turned, and there she was again, the girl, but no longer small, no longer childlike. She was Mara's size now, wearing her skin, her voice, her laugh, and in her hand scissors. Let him speak, Mara growled. The girl tilted her head. Why? You never did. She raised the scissors to her own face, to the seams of her skin, and began to cut. Mara screamed, but not from fear, from recognition, because she'd felt this before. Every time she'd looked in the mirror and didn't quite believe it. She wasn't the one who got away. She was the one who stayed. The girl peeled back the mask, revealing not flesh, not bone, but a speaker, a machine made of breath and memory. It played her own voice back at her, over and over. I'm fine. I'm okay. It was nothing. And behind her, Jonah began to sob. Even with his mouth sewn shut, Mara stepped forward, took the scissors, cut his stitches. He gasped, then whispered, "She's not trying to take your voice up. She's trying to give it back." The house shook. Walls screamed. All the hanging mouths fell to the ground. And from their shattered pieces came light, a light that hurt, because it was truth, and Mara wasn't ready for it. She turned to the girl, who now looked just like her again, but softer, more human, tears in her eyes. "You were never broken," the girl whispered. "You were just quiet." And then she stepped into Mara, folded like a whisper into breath, and vanished. Mara screamed, a real scream, and this time the house listened. It cracked, splintered. Light poured in from the ceiling. A mirror shattered in reverse, and all the stolen voices screamed back at once. "You're not an echo anymore." Mara didn't remember falling asleep, but when her eyes opened, the world was colorless. Not black and white, just drained, like someone had whispered the color out of everything. The ceiling above her sagged with rot. The floor beneath her pulsed, faintly, like a muscle. She was no longer in the hallway, no longer in the room with mouths, no longer anywhere she'd seen before. And when she tried to speak, nothing came out. Her throat was open, her mouth was moving, but her voice was gone again, not stolen. Spent, she sat up, slow and aching. The air around her was thick with soundless noise. Everything buzzed, like a storm that had forgotten how to break, and across the room, if you could call it that, was a shape, a doorway, framed in bone, lit faintly from the other side. Mara stood, walked toward it, because now, more than ever, she needed answers, and she needed herself. The doorway led into a narrow passage of mirrors, all smashed. Each shard reflected something different. One showed her screaming. Another showed her asleep in the woods. One showed her bleeding from the ears while the girl smiled behind her. But none of them reflected the present, because the present didn't exist here. Only memory. And memory in this place was a weapon. A voice rose behind her. Low. Familiar. "You don't get to bury truth, Mara." She turned, but he wasn't there. Just the echo of his words. Or maybe he was never the one who said them in the first place. Because now, she could feel it. The house wasn't haunted. It was the ghost. And its memories weren't echoes. They were mouths. And they were hungry. She passed deeper into the mirror maze. The reflections became clearer, brighter, too bright, like staring into headlights. They showed scenes she didn't want to see. Her mother crying at the kitchen table. Her father screaming in the hallway. Jonah curled in bed, whispering her name. And one she didn't remember at all, Mara, standing in the basement, smiling, holding hands with the girl, and both of them saying, in perfect sync, "One of us leaves. The other forgets." The maze ended at a spiral staircase made of vertebrae. Each step creaked like a whisper. She climbed. The climb took forever, or maybe seconds. Time collapsed in on itself here, and when she reached the top, she was in the attic. It was just like she remembered, dusty, silent, a single window looking out into black, a wooden chair in the center. But this time, someone sat in it. Back to her, a girl in white, still, waiting. Mara stepped closer. "Who are you?" she whispered. And this time, her voice worked. The girl turned, and it was her. But younger, mouth stitched shut again, eyes pleading, and in her hands, a box. The box pulsed. Soundless. But inside it, Mara could hear everything she'd ever wanted to say and never did. "I'm scared. I miss you. I wish I hadn't run. I'm sorry, Jonah. I don't want to forget." Her own voice. Untouched. Preserved. She dropped to her knees in front of the box. "Why are you showing me this?" The girl didn't answer. She opened the box, and a storm of sound filled the attic. Voices spilled out like smoke, filling every inch of space. Her childhood laughter, her mother's lullabies, Jonah's midnight whispers, all of them circling, louder and louder, until Mara screamed just to hear herself over it. And the girl reached forward, touched Mara's chest, and whispered, "Take it back." Pain split through her, like something was being shoved down her throat. Her ears bled, her knees buckled. But she held on. She let the voices rush into her. Let the fear crash. Let the grief choke. She didn't run, didn't hide, not this time. When the sound stopped, the attic was empty. The girl was gone. The chair was broken, and Mara stood taller, stronger, not healed, but whole. She looked out the attic window and saw herself standing on the porch of the house, watching, waiting. But that version of her was still hollow, still echo, still waiting for her to fail. And Mara wasn't going to. Not now. Not anymore. She walked back down the stairs, through the cracked halls, past the mouths, the mirrors, the rooms with her name on the walls. And when she reached the front door of Winter Hollow, she opened it. Outside was a field of mirrors, hundreds, each one standing tall, each one reflecting a different future. In one, she walked away. In another, she burned the house. In another still, she never spoke again. But only one mirror showed her walking toward it, eyes sharp. Voice returned, and smiling, not the too wide, hollow smile, but her own. She stepped into that mirror, and the house behind her collapsed, screaming, shrieking, trying to hold her in. But it couldn't. Not anymore. She had her voice. She had her truth. She was Mara, the one who remembered, the one who spoke, the one who survived. The mirror closed behind her, not with a slam, not with a shatter, with a sigh, as if something inside the house had finally exhaled after holding its breath for too many years. Mara stood in a field, no longer twisted, no longer haunted, just still. The grass moved the way grass is supposed to, beneath a calm breeze. The sky, no longer black or blood, red hung above her in its usual blue, scattered with clouds that didn't blink or shift into faces. But peace is never silent, because in peace you remember, and Mara had remembered too much. She walked for what felt like hours, down a dirt road that curved gently, like it didn't want to startle her, until she came to a house. Not the house. This one was different. A quiet farmhouse, paint chipped from time. Not malice. Windows open, curtains dancing in the breeze. The mailbox read ELDR Son. She didn't know the name, but the air buzzed with memory, not hers, someone else's. And something told her she had to knock. She stepped up the porch, hesitated, knocked 3 times. Silence. Then, soft footsteps inside. The door opened. An old woman peered out, gray hair in a loose braid, eyes sharp but kind. "You're early," the woman said. Mara's stomach turned. "Do I know you?" The woman didn't answer, just opened the door wider. "You've been carrying something that isn't yours," she said. "Come in. Let's set it down." The house smelled like tea and dust, not rot, not blood. Mara followed the woman to a kitchen lit by a single hanging bulb. On the table, 2 cups of tea, one still steaming. She sat, watched the woman pour a few drops of honey into her own cup with trembling fingers. "You've seen her?" the woman said. "Haven't you?" Mara nodded slowly. "I was her." "No," the woman said gently. "You were her, but you were never her." Then the woman slid something across the table. A box. Mara froze. It was the same box the girl in the attic had held, but older now, more cracked, as though time had tried to forget it. "What is this?" Mara asked.
"A question?"
the woman said. "One you've already answered, but now you get to understand it." Mara opened the box. No storm this time. No screaming voices, just a single tape, labeled, "The Ones Who Forgot." She picked it up, held it like it might bite. "Play it," the woman said. "You've earned the truth." The woman pulled a dusty tape recorder from a cupboard, plugged it in. The player clicked. Static, then a voice, not Mara's, a man, older, measured. "This is Dr. Peter Elderson. If you're hearing this, it means the girl found you. That means you're a carrier." Static again. Then his voice returned. The voice lives like a parasite. It doesn't destroy the host. It becomes the host, piece by piece. And if you silence yourself long enough, it can wear you completely. Mara shivered. Dr. Elderson continued. "We tried to stop it. In 1981, we burned the first house. In 1992, we sealed the second. But it always finds someone new. Someone willing to stay quiet." A pause. And then, chilling. "The only cure is confession." The tape clicked off. Mara sat in stunned silence. "The parasite," she whispered. "It was real." The woman nodded. "And it isn't gone. Not entirely. It leaves pieces behind. In all of us." Mara looked up, voice hollow. "Then why did it let me go?" The woman's eyes darkened. "It didn't." The world around them shifted. Slightly. The teacup on the table rattled. The walls groaned like they were stretching, and in the corner of the room, where nothing had been before, a mirror appeared. Mara stood, walked slowly toward it. Inside, her reflection stared back, but it didn't move, didn't blink, and as she stepped closer, the reflection opened its mouth, and Mara's own voice came out. "You're not done remembering." The woman behind her spoke gently. "Do you know what happens when people forget too much?" Mara turned, trembling. "What?" "They become her." The mirror began to crack, hairline fractures spreading like frost. Mara backed away. But the glass didn't break, it peeled, like skin, and underneath wasn't another world. It was a face, the girl's, her eyes wide, lips soon shut again, but her smile, soft, forgiving. The woman moved toward Mara, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Would you like to hear the rest?" she asked. Mara nodded. The woman handed her another tape. No label. Just a sticky note. "This one's yours." The tape was warm in Mara's hand. Not from heat. From memory. Like it had been played 1,000 times, but only by her, each play digging deeper, each rewind wearing down the walls between what she remembered and what she couldn't bear to. It had no label, no markings, no hints. Just a sticky note. "This one's yours." The old woman didn't speak as Mara placed it in the recorder. Didn't flinch when it clicked. Didn't blink when the static began to swell. This tape wasn't like the others. It didn't start with a voice. It started with breathing. Not hers. Not the girl's. Someone else. Heavy. Strained. Followed by a sound Mara hadn't heard in years. A knock. 3 times. A pause. Then Jonah. But young. 11, maybe 12. "Mom. Dad." Another pause. "You guys?" It's dark again. Silence. "Where's Mara?" His voice cracked at the edges. I heard her whispering to someone in the vents again. Mara's chest caved in around the sound. She remembered now. She was the one whispering. Late at night. Not to herself, not to Jonah. To the girl. She had called her different names then. Imaginary friend. Secret sister. Echo. The name didn't matter. What mattered was the promise. "If you keep me safe, I'll never tell anyone about you." And the girl had kept her word. Until now. The tape crackled again, and the sound changed. Older Mara this time, breathing faster, crying, whispering. "I thought I left you. I thought I locked you in." The girl's voice, overlapping, soft. "You did," more static than one last voice, one Mara didn't expect, her mother, sobbing. "If she speaks again, we're all gone." The tape stopped, but not like the others. It didn't click off. It just faded, as if the memory itself had been exhausted. Mara looked up at the old woman. Tears traced her cheeks. "She was never trying to hurt me," Mara said. The woman nodded. "She wasn't haunting you. She was keeping her promise." Mara stood, dizzy. Everything felt off center now, like the floor was a little too soft. The walls breathing just a little too slow. "I need to go back," Mara whispered. "Back where?" The woman asked, though she already knew. Mara's voice cracked. "To the first place I heard her voice." The drive was quiet. Too quiet. Even the wind didn't bother whispering. No cars passed her. No signs welcomed her. Just the long, empty road leading back to where it had all started. Winter Hollow. Not the house. Not yet. The woods. The place where she first followed the voice beyond the fence line. Past the twisted oaks, where no trail had ever existed. She parked and stepped into the trees. The world grew colder by the footstep. The sun dimmed as if ashamed of what it was about to reveal, and there beyond the clearing was the place, the hollow, not metaphorical. A literal hollow, a ring of dead trees. The soil dry, cracked, and in the center, a single object, a tape recorder. Mara moved toward it. She already knew what it would do. Already felt her bones tighten in anticipation. She pressed play and heard her own voice. Not from years ago. Not a memory. Right now. "He," the voice said. "I knew you'd come back." Mara blinked. She hadn't said those words, but the voice was hers. "I wanted to thank you," it said, "for letting me wear you." A pause. "But you're tired now." Mara's hands trembled. "And I'm ready to carry you instead." The recorder clicked off silence. Then, from behind her, footsteps. She turned and saw herself, older, worn, but smiling, softly, not menacing. Just tired. And the older version of Mara, who somehow was still her, reached out a hand. "You don't have to run anymore." And for the first time, Mara didn't. She took the hand, felt everything, every room, every screen, every mirror, every version of her that had broken, hidden, been buried or replaced. All of them, woven together, all again. The hollow pulsed. The trees cracked, but didn't fall, because the curse wasn't anger, it was memory. And now, finally, Mara remembered it all. And the voice, it wasn't hungry, it wasn't evil, it was hers, just lost, and found again. As she stood there, holding her own hand, the trees whispered a final word, "Stay," and for once, she did. The hollow didn't let people stay. It held them just long enough to remind them what they'd tried to forget. Then it turned them loose, changed, cracked, silenced. But Mara, she stayed. And the trees bent forward, whispering not warnings, but welcomes. She sat in the center of the circle, where the tape recorder still rested. No new messages, no strange clicks, no ghostly voices, just the soft creak of branches above her and the quiet hum of the world remembering how to breathe. She had never felt so still, so heavy. Not in a way that pulled her down, but in a way that made her feel rooted. Like she belonged. And for the first time in years, she didn't ask why. The wind moved differently here. It didn't pass through. It circled, and with every gust, it brought fragments, memories. Not just hers, everyone's. A woman's sob from decades ago. A boy's laugh that never made it past puberty. A scream, Mara's own, from that summer in the house. And beneath it all, the sound of a lullaby, sung by a voice with no throat. Familiar, the girl. Always the girl. Mara stood. The trees tilted with her, as if watching, judging, or waiting. She turned to face the far end of the clearing, a small path barely visible, carved only by footsteps that shouldn't have been remembered. It was the path she'd taken that summer, the one she thought she'd imagined, the one she followed when Jonah was asleep, the one that led to the pit. She walked it now without hesitation. Her feet didn't sink into the moss. Her body didn't tremble. The fear was still there, deep, embedded like a splinter, but it no longer dictated her pace. She reached the pit in minutes. Still there. Still wrong. The earth around it cracked and pulsing, like a mouth preparing to speak. And in the center, where soil met void, a single object lay untouched, a child's shoe. Her own. She stepped closer, picked it up. It was far too small for her now, but the moment her fingers touched it, the hollow screamed. Not loud, not violent, but long. A mourning sound. From the pit, a whisper followed. We were supposed to leave together. Mara didn't flinch. She knelt by the edge and whispered back, I know. More silence. Then a hand. Small. Dirty. Rising up slowly from the dark. It wasn't trying to grab her. It was offering. In its palm, a sliver of mirror. She took it. Saw nothing in it. Just a smear of ash and her own pulse flickering in the reflection. But then, from somewhere deep in the pit, her voice. The first thing she ever said to the girl. I won't tell. The ground beneath her vibrated. The trees pulled tighter around the pit, and in the reflection of the mirror shard, something formed. Not a face, not a shape, just a word. Remember. And then, darkness. Not black, not blindness, just absence. No time, no movement, no breath. And in that place a conversation began, but not in words, in echoes. Thoughts that belonged to both of them. Girl, you gave me silence. Mara, I gave you safety. Girl, you called me echo. Mara, because you repeated what I couldn't say. Girl, you were afraid. Mara, you were alone. A pause. Then, girl, I don't want to wear you anymore. Mara, then take your name back. Girl, I don't have one. Mara, yes, you do. I just never said it. The hollow returned. Color washed back into the world, and Mara stood again, but she wasn't alone. The girl stood beside her, solid, real, wearing no mask, no imitation of Mara's face. She looked like no one Mara had ever seen before, and yet she was familiar. Like an old friend you forgot you loved. They stared at one another for a long time. And then the girl, no, the woman, spoke. I remember now. Mara smiled, weak and honest. So do I. The woman touched Mara's chest, right over the place where her voice once hid. You don't have to carry me anymore. And as she stepped back, she began to fade, not in pain, not in fear, but like a story ending. Her final words, thank you for not forgetting me. Mara collapsed, tears streaming, the pit sealed behind her with no sound, no scream, no threat, just soil closing over memory. By the time she made it back to her car, night had come, not dark, just still. She didn't start the engine right away. She just sat there, hand on the wheel, breathing. And then she looked in the rearview mirror, and this time, she was the only one in it. The mirror was empty. No flicker behind her eyes. No delayed smile. No hidden mouth stretching beneath the skin. Just her. Mara. But something about seeing herself again. The real self, not the stitched together version. Not the echo. Left her feeling heavier than relief should. She wasn't carrying anyone anymore, but the absence felt like a phantom weight. And in her chest, just under her ribs, she swore something had changed. Mara drove without music. She didn't trust her voice to fill the silence yet, and she definitely didn't trust the radio. The farther she got from the hollow, the more the world looked like it should. Gas stations with flickering signs. Billboards about funeral homes and fast food. A late summer sun hanging lazily over an empty road. But even normal had seams now, and she could see where it started to fray. She arrived back in the city by dusk. Parked outside her apartment. Stared at the building like it was a stranger. Because in many ways, it was. The place she'd lived in had hosted something else for so long. She wasn't sure she'd ever truly been there. She climbed the stairs. Avoided the elevator. Her body remembered which ones creaked. The patterns felt familiar. Too familiar, like someone had been practicing them. Inside her apartment, nothing had changed. Except the light. It was too bright in the corners. Too dark in the center. She flipped the switch. The bulbs didn't respond. Not broken, just waiting. She crossed the room, heart rising with each step. Everything looked untouched. The couch, the rug, the photo frames. Except the hallway mirror. It was gone. And in its place, a door. It shouldn't have been there. There'd never been a door in that wall. Not in the blueprint, not in her memory. But now, it stood crooked in the plaster like it had always been there. A brass doorknob, no keyhole, no frame. A sticky note was pinned to the surface. One word, K-N-O-S-K. She didn't want to. Not just out of fear, but out of the deep certainty that something would answer. Still her hand rose, fingers curled. She knocked once, twice, 3 times. Silence. Then, a voice on the other side. Her own. You're early. Mara stepped back. The doorknob clicked. The door cracked open an inch. Darkness behind it, thick, still. And from within, that same voice, hers, spoke again. You left me too soon. The door opened wider, and something stepped out. Not the girl. Not a ghost. Not a memory. But a house. It shouldn't have been possible, but Mara felt it. Not physically, but spiritually. The presence of the house. The one she'd left behind. Standing in her living room. Shrinking and folding and fitting into a shape just barely human. A silhouette of rooms. Of windows. Of staircases where limbs should be. The door slammed behind it. The lights all died. And the house spoke. You didn't finish, it said. Its voice sounded like scraping beams. Whispering wallpaper. Crying floorboards. You remembered her, but not what you did after. Mara clenched her jaw. I let her go. The house tilted its head. A chandelier of ribs dangled beneath its ceiling throat. You let her go, it repeated. But not me? Suddenly, she was inside it again. The city, the apartment, gone. No transition. Just a blink. And now she stood in a version of the house she'd never seen. One that didn't exist, or maybe one that existed between the real ones. The wallpaper pulsed with veins. The mirrors didn't reflect, they played tapes, and at the end of the hallway was a second Mara. Mouth wide, arms out, waiting. She turned to run, but the house had sealed behind her. Every step forward echoed backward. Footsteps from behind came faster than hers. Panic boiled in her throat. The hallway stretched longer with each sprint. Doors opened along the sides, each one showing a version of her leaving. Sometimes she screamed. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just watched from the window as Jonah disappeared behind the walls. One version, the worst one, just smiled. The house whispered around her. You walked out with a voice that wasn't yours. And you never asked where the original one went. Mara screamed, I asked! And her voice, finally, split the house in two. The walls cracked. The mirrors exploded in light. The hallway collapsed inward, and from the brokenness, a mouth emerged, not attached to a face, just floating, huge, dripping black. It whispered, You never ask, ah? Because you already knew. Then it opened wide, swallowed her whole. Mara fell through memory. Scenes blurred around her. Winter Hollow, the attic, the mouth in the wall, Jonah's stitched lips, the girl beneath the floor, the moment she said nothing, the deal, the silence, the trade, the truth she still hadn't said out loud. She had liked being empty. It hurt less, until it didn't. She landed in a small room, grated, like a holding cell for thoughts. On the wall a mirror, a tape recorder, and in the corner a box, labeled her name. The room didn't breathe, didn't pulse, didn't shift. It just waited. 4 padded walls, 1 mirror, 1 box, 1 tape recorder. Mara stood in the center, and the silence around her wasn't natural. It was expectant, like a held breath before the scream. The box in the corner hadn't moved, but it felt like it had been watching her for years. Labeled her name. Mara took 1 step toward it. The lights above flickered, not with voltage, but recognition. Each step she took made the room feel smaller, tighter, as if the very walls were growing nervous. When she touched the lid of the box, her fingertips tingled, like the air around her wasn't sure it wanted her to continue. But she opened it anyway. Inside a single scrap of paper, folded once, old, yellowed at the edges. She picked it up, unfolded it. One word written in shaky black ink, Eloise. The moment her eyes registered the name, the room exhaled. A gust of cold air swept through, and the mirror, previously silent, spoke. Not with voice, but with motion. Her reflection blinked, then opened its mouth. No sound. But the name appeared behind the glass, scratched backwards into the mirror's surface. Eloise. Mara whispered it. The first time she had ever spoken the girl's name. The lights went out. In the dark, something shifted. Not outside, inside her. Like an echo that had waited so long it had begun to rot. The silence twisted, hummed, then cracked. She heard laughter. A child's laugh. Then her own voice as a child. Tag, you're it. Then a scream. Then silence. Then the tape recorder clicked on. She turned to face it. No one had pressed play. But it spun anyway. And from it came a voice Mara hadn't heard since the night everything broke. Her mother. Eloise isn't a ghost. She's a scar. Mara stood frozen. The tape continued. She was never meant to follow you. She stayed because you carved her name into yourself. Another voice. Jonah this time. You didn't forget her. You buried her under your name. Amara clutched the mirror. The reflection no longer moved. But the name, Eloise, was glowing behind the glass. And then the surface rippled, like water. And out stepped the girl. But not the twisted version, not the monster. Just Eloise. Small, quiet, human. She looked up at Mara. You said you'd keep me, she whispered. You said I could stay. Mara fell to her knees. The guilt returned all at once. The summer, the scream, the silence, the trade, and now the name, spoken. Finally. I'm sorry, Mara said. I didn't understand what I was doing. Eloise tilted her head. You gave me your voice. I just kept it safe. The mirror behind her cracked. Not from violence, from release. Each fracture lit up with a memory. Jonah's terrified face in the hallway. Her mother's bleeding hands as she blocked the attic door. The mouth in the wall opening wide beneath her bed. The deal. The promise. The silence. Mara stood. It's over, she said. I said your name. Eloise smiled, but it was sad. You said it? She nodded. But that's not enough. Behind her, the mirror burst, and through the broken glass came 1,000 reflections, each one a different version of Mara, screaming, begging, burning, running, forgetting, and at the very center one version that didn't move. Mouth closed, eyes empty, hands folded. That was the one that stayed behind. Eloise reached for Mara's hand. I can't go unless you take her back. Mara stared at the unmoving version of herself, the one that had never escaped the house, the one she left behind without even knowing. Now she could feel it, the split. Two versions of her had been walking the world, one with a voice, one with the silence. And now it was time to choose. She walked up to the reflection, raised her palm. The silent version mirrored her, motionless. Mara pressed her hand to the glass. The moment they touched, pain, unbelievable pain. Every scream she never let out, every truth she swallowed, every lie she told herself to feel safe. They all crashed into her at once. The mirror reassembled, clean, whole, no cracks, no reflections. Just her and Eloise, still holding her hand. The girl smiled again, this time not sad, just tired. Now I can sleep, she said, and you can speak. Mara leaned forward, pressed her forehead to Eloise's. Rest now, she whispered. I remember your name. And just like that, Eloise vanished. Mara stood alone, in the padded room. But it was no longer cold, no longer waiting. The door opened behind her. And this time, she walked through. The door didn't creak, didn't groan. It just opened, as if it had been unlocked for years and was only now ready to admit it. Mara stepped through, expecting more darkness, more tricks, more shifting reflections and broken memories. But what waited on the other side was a hallway, ordinary, beige, fluorescent lighting overhead, buzzing slightly. The kind of hallway you'd find in an office building, or a hospital, or a place designed to look like it never kept secrets. She walked carefully, boots echoing softly against the polished floor. Doors lined the hallway on both sides, some closed, some slightly ajar, each one marked with a room number, but no names, until she reached room 217. That one was different. The number had been scratched out, and below it etched deeply into the paint with something sharp, D.O. Newt O pen. So, naturally, she did. The handle was cold, not metallic, more like stone. The moment she turned it, the hallway behind her blinked out. She was in the room. No transition, no footsteps, just inside. And what she saw made her breath catch. Photos, thousands of them, pinned to every wall, stacked in boxes, taped to the floor, hanging from the ceiling by string, all of them of her. Different ages, different places, some she recognized, some she didn't. One of her in her first grade classroom, smiling with missing teeth. One of her on a swing, feet in the air. One of her asleep in bed just last week. And behind her in nearly every photo the girl. Sometimes blurred, sometimes clear, sometimes just a shadow or the edge of a dress. But always there, always watching. In the center of the room a desk, and on it a file folder, worn, stamped in red across the front, PATN FARGN. She sat, opened it. Inside a single form. Patient name Mara Elise Reed. Status reconstructed. Diagnosis survivor of voice displacement syndrome, VDS. Notes patient exhibits classic symptoms of long-term echo, host fracture, memory gaps, visual distortions, loss of authentic vocal response. Believes herself to be sole identity and control. Partial integration achieved. Mara's hands shook. This was her. A record of what she had been, not possessed, not haunted, split. She flipped the page. More photos. But these were different. Medical. Images of a girl with stitches in her mouth, hands bound, eyes open and watching. Notes scribbled below. Subject Eloise remains dormant unless prompted by full name invocation. Host unwilling to vocalize. She ran her fingers across the text. So someone knew. Someone had studied this, treated it like an illness, but it hadn't cured her. It had caged her. She looked up and found a mirror, not cracked, not bleeding, clean, but empty, no reflection, just the room behind her, and on the glass, written in the same etching as the hallway door, "This is where you were erased." The air turned cold, not winter cold, void cold, like something had just left, or was about to arrive. The photographs on the walls began to curl, then peel, then lift, not falling, floating. One by one they spun in the air, orbiting the center of the room. And in the center, a shape began to form. Not Eloise, not Mara, something in between. A woman, eyes like closed doors, a mouth stitched partially shut, skin made of paper, photos embedded in her arms, mirrors in her chest. She looked at Mara, and then she spoke, not with voice, but with her face. It changed, shifted, wore every version of Mara, one after another, screaming, begging, smiling, silent, until finally the voice returned, a chorus of all of them. You wanted to forget. Mara took a step back. No, I was a child. I didn't understand. The paper, woman tilted her head. You let us rot in silence. A flicker, her voice as a girl. Please make it stop. Another flicker, her voice in therapy. It didn't happen the way they said. Another, her adult voice. I'm fine. I just get tired sometimes. Then, nothing. Then Eloise's voice. You gave me the silence. You don't get to bury the sound. The floor split. Photos fell like feathers. The room dropped into darkness. Mara fell with it. Down, down, through voices, screams, cries, whispers of people who forgot their names, forgot their stories, forgot themselves. And at the very bottom, one last tape recorder, floating in the dark, with a label written in her own handwriting. If I disappear, press play. The tape recorder hovered in the dark like an offering. No ground beneath it, no sky above, just void. Mara reached for it. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from weight. The weight of everything that had finally surfaced. The memories, the voices, the name. Her fingers grazed the play button, and the void whispered, "Are you sure?" She pressed it anyway. Click, at first silence, then her voice. Calm, measured, tired. "If I disappear," a pause. "It won't be sudden, it'll be slow." Quiet, like falling asleep in someone else's body. Mara's throat clenched. "If I disappear, it'll mean she's awake again. That she's remembering me. That she's reclaiming what I forgot." Another pause. Longer. Then, "I'm not angry with her. I was the one who left her behind." The voice wavered now. "If I disappear, promise me something. Don't bury the truth again." The recorder stopped. No rewind, no click, just stillness. And then light. Soft at first, like fog. Then brighter. Stronger. It wasn't warm. It was cleansing. And for the first time since stepping into Winter Hollow, Mara felt something she didn't recognize: peace. But peace didn't mean safety. She blinked. The void dissolved around her, and she stood in a room that should not exist. The original nursery. The first one. From the house before the house. Before Winter Hollow. Before the tapes. The room her parents never spoke about. The one they sealed off. Called unfinished. Called unsafe. But Mara remembered now. It was Eloise's room. Toys scattered on the floor. A mobile twisted slowly above an empty crib. And on the wall, crayon drawings. One in particular, two girls, holding hands. One smiling. One with her mouth scribbled out. Below it, written in a child's scrawl, "We share." Mara touched the wall. The crayon crumbled. The paper peeled. And behind it, another door. No knob. No markings. Just a pulse where a handle should be. She pressed her hand against it, and it opened with a breath. On the other side, a hospital room. White. Sterile. Flickering fluorescent lights. In the bed, her, unmoving, eyes closed, breathing slow. A heart monitor beeped steadily, and seated beside the bed, Jonah. Older, tired, he looked up and saw her. "Mara," he whispered. But she didn't answer, because she couldn't. Not yet. She stepped closer, looked down at the body. Her body, and now she understood. This wasn't memory, wasn't fantasy, wasn't the house. This was the real world, and she was still in it, but only barely. Jonah leaned in, took the hand of the unconscious Mara, squeezed, and whispered. "She said your name." Mara blinked.
Voice.
He continued. "She said it last night. First time in years." He laughed, short, broken. "I thought maybe it meant something." Mara looked at her other self in the bed, so still. But inside, she could feel it now. The pieces shifting, merging, settling. She had been in both places this whole time. The world above, the world below, one speaking, one silent. Now she had to choose: go back, or stay out. A voice whispered behind her. "Eloise." "You remember now." Mara turned. The girl stood in the corner, no longer a shadow, no longer stitched, just whole, and glowing faintly. "Then what happens now?" Mara asked. "You give it back," Eloise said. Mara swallowed hard. "My voice." "No," the girl said, smiling. "Your silence." Mara stepped forward, kissed Eloise on the forehead. "Thank you for holding it," she whispered, and the girl vanished, like a breath, like a sigh, like someone finally falling asleep in peace. Mara opened her eyes. In the hospital bed, for real this time, the monitor beeped. Jonah gasped, "Mara." Her lips moved, dry, slow, but the words were clear. "I remember her name," and the room lit up with sunlight. The sun pouring through the hospital blinds didn't feel real. Not yet. It was too golden, too warm, like a detail added by someone trying to convince Mara that everything was okay now, that the nightmare had ended, that the mirror had been sealed, that the voice had been returned. But truth wasn't that clean. She felt it in her bones. Something was still listening. Jonah stood frozen by her bed, eyes wide, lips trembling. He hadn't seen her move in 18 months. Not blink. Not twitch. Not flinch when they whispered her name at night in the hope she'd twitch a finger. But now she was sitting up, speaking. "I remember her name," she'd said. Over and over in his dreams, he imagined that voice again. He'd convinced himself it was lost. That whatever version of Mara he had left it wasn't her. But here she was, alive, awake, and speaking. He dropped into the chair beside her, gripping her hand. It was warm. Real, not hollow. Not cold like the thing that had once worn her face in the old house. Long before either of them understood what they were dealing with, he wanted to cry, to scream, to call the nurses. But he didn't, because Mara was watching him with haunted eyes. Like she wasn't all the way back yet. Like part of her was still listening to voices he couldn't hear. Her hand tightened around his. "There's something I need to do," she said. Jonah frowned. "You just woke up. What are you talking about?" Her eyes flicked to the corner of the room. Jonah turned. There was nothing there. Just a hospital cabinet. A chair. An empty mirror on the wall. But Mara saw it. Not with her eyes. With the space behind her thoughts. The mirror flickered, and in it, a shadow. A girl, smiling softly, not threatening. Just present. Eloise. "She followed me back," Mara whispered. Jonah's breath hitched. The girl. From the house. "She's not a ghost," Mara said. "She's not evil. She's memory. She's silence. And she's still connected to me." Jonah stepped back. All those years he'd tried to track the girl down, to find the truth. He broke into old archives, interviewed survivors, followed every broken trail, and now the answer was sitting in a hospital bed, alive and not alone. Mara swung her legs off the bed, stood. The hospital room creaked slightly beneath her weight, though not from her body, from her presence. As if gravity itself had adjusted to the fact she was no longer a vessel of silence. Now she carried sound names, voices, truth, and it was heavy. "I need to go back," she said. Jonah's face hardened. "No, you don't. We're done with that place." Mara looked at him, not with anger, just understanding. "I left something in the walls," she said. "A long time ago." Jonah's jaw clenched. "You left her." "No," Mara said softly. "I left me." They left the hospital without checking out, without waiting for clearance. No alarms sounded. No nurses stopped them. Because in some way, the world was ready for her to leave. Like it knew she wasn't a patient anymore. Like the version of Mara who needed recovery was already dead and buried in Winter Hollow. The drive was quiet. Jonah didn't ask where they were going. He already knew. Mara didn't need a GPS. She didn't look at signs. The road unfolded for her like it had been waiting this whole time. The world remembered what she'd forgotten. And just past the last living tree, after the cracked fence, Winter Hollow waited. It hadn't aged. Not like it should have. The roof still slouched in the same way. The shutters still hung like drooping eyelids. The front steps still leaned slightly to the left. But it wasn't dust that lived inside now. It was memory and presence. And her. They stepped inside. No creak, no wind, no smell, just silence. Then, from deep inside, a breath. Jonah froze. "Did you hear that?" Mara nodded. "It's her. She's been waiting." They moved through the house together, past rooms they'd once locked, past doorways that had led to nowhere and everywhere, until they reached the one room they had never dared open again. The basement door. Jonah hesitated. "It's sealed," he whispered. "I boarded it. Nailed it shut myself. But the boards were gone. Not removed. Not broken. Just gone, like they had never been there." Mara put her hand on the doorknob. It was warm. She turned it. And the house exhaled. They descended into the dark. No flashlight. No match. Just memory. And memory is a cruel guide, because it only shows you what you're ready to face. And this time, they saw everything. The girl was waiting at the bottom. Not Eloise. Mara, the Mara who never left, still 10 years old, still barefoot, still silent, eyes empty, face blank, hands bloody. She looked up at the woman who wore her face now, and whispered, "You left me in the wall." Jonah reached for her, but Mara stopped him. She stepped forward, kneeled in front of the younger version of herself, took her small hands, and said, "I'm here now." The girl blinked. For the first time in over 20 years, she smiled, and behind her, the wall cracked, just enough for one voice to come out. Not the girl's, not Mara's, but a third one. One they had both forgotten, their mother. She whispered from the wall, "I forgave you the day you stopped speaking." The voice in the wall wasn't loud. It didn't echo, didn't shiver through the beams or scream from hidden vents. It just was, soft, simple. A sentence that sounded like a breath finally let go. "I forgave you the day you stopped speaking." Mara froze. The small version of her, the silent girl with the blank eyes, tightened her grip on Mara's hands. Jonah stepped forward, eyes wide. "That was her," he whispered. "That was our mother." Mara finished. It had been years since they'd heard her voice, not just because she was gone, but because it hurt to remember it. Their mother had been the first to see what was happening to Mara. She'd been the one who'd tried to fight it, who'd screamed at the walls, who'd begged the house to give her daughter back, and in the end, she was the first person the silence swallowed. Not killed, swallowed. Mara stepped toward the wall. The voice didn't repeat, didn't plead, just lingered. The wood wasn't warped. No hidden compartment. No blood-soaked message. Just a panel. One she hadn't dared touch since that night. The one she watched her mother disappear behind. She reached out now, laid her palm flat against it. It was warm, alive, and when she pressed, it opened with a soft click. Behind it, a narrow crawl space, low ceiling, dust, photographs nailed to the beams, family portraits, all of them altered, her mother's face scratched out in some. In others, Mara's smile had been darkened with black marker. In one, Jonah's eyes had been replaced with buttons, a silent world of broken images. But in the center, a small tape recorder, still running, still spinning, playing nothing but air. Jonah stepped closer. His voice trembled. "She used to record herself when she was afraid." Mara nodded. "I remember." Jonah reached down, pressed stop, then rewind. The machine screeched softly, then clicked, and the voice returned. Their mother, tired, crying. "She's slipping away, static. There's something else in her now. Something watching through her eyes. Static. She said its name is Eloise, but it doesn't like when I say it aloud. Static. If I disappear, tell her I never blamed her." The tape ended. Jonah covered his mouth, turned away. Mara stayed frozen. The silence between them was louder than any scream. And then the little girl, young Mara, spoke, clear. She said it twice. "That means it's true." Mara turned slowly. The child was smiling again. But her eyes were no longer empty, they were hers. The wall behind the panel rumbled. Dust fell from above, and deep within the crawl space, a second door appeared. Smaller, older, made of splintered red wood. There was no handle. Only a word burned into the surface, remember. Jonah looked at Mara. "You don't have to open that." "I know," she said. "But I will." She turned the child version of herself toward him. "Stay with her, no matter what happens. Don't let her go." Jonah nodded. Mara stepped into the crawl space. The floor creaked under her weight. The air grew colder. When she touched the burned word, the door swung open. No sound, no breath, just black. She stepped inside, and found herself in a place she hadn't seen in 20 years. The room where it all began, not the basement, not the attic, but a room deeper, below the foundation, walls pulsing, not with light, with memory. It wasn't a room, it was a womb, and it had been waiting. A figure stood in the center, her mother, but wrong, too tall, too thin, hands trembling. A face that flickered between sadness and rage. She turned, smiled. Finally, she whispered, "You came back to bury me properly." Mara's throat tightened. "I didn't know." The figure stepped closer. "Didn't know what?" "That I gave up everything for you. That I screamed my name hoarse until the walls wouldn't hear me anymore." Mara shook her head. "No, I didn't know I was the one who let it in." The figure froze, then nodded. "Yes, you did. But you were a child. Children don't know what silence costs." The walls trembled around them. Mara stepped forward. "If I say your name, can you rest?" The figure blinked. "No. If you say my name, you can." Amara closed her eyes, spoke the name. Her mother's full name, Clara Delphine Reed. The ceiling cracked. Light poured in. The floor splintered. The figure smiled one last time. "Tell Jonah I love him." Then she was gone. Mara fell backward into the light, into warmth, into the truth. When she landed, she wasn't in the crawl space. She wasn't in the house. She was outside, on the grass, the front yard of Winter Hollow. Sun rising, Jonah beside her, and in his arms, the girl, silent, sleeping, and finally, smiling. The sun should have felt like victory, warmth across her face, the crisp scent of morning in the grass. The sound of wind that didn't carry voices for once, but it didn't feel like the end. It felt like the eye of a storm. A moment of quiet before the house caught its breath again, before it remembered who it was, and what it wanted. Mara sat up slowly. Jonah knelt beside her, cradling the sleeping girl in his arms. Her, the child version, the last shard of Mara that had never grown up, never left the house, never stopped hiding under the floor. She looked peaceful now, breathing soft. No fear in her expression. "She's free," Jonah whispered. But Mara knew better. "She's resting," she said. That's not the same. Behind them, Winter Hollow stood silent. But silence in this place never meant safe. Mara turned to face the house, eyes narrowing. The front door, still ajar. The windows, still empty, but not hollow. Something inside was waiting. Not Eloise, not her mother. Not the girl she left behind. Something else. Something that hadn't spoken yet, because it didn't need a voice. Jonah followed her gaze. "You think it's not over?" Mara shook her head. "It's never been about just me." The wind shifted, and with it came the smell. Burned wood, molded tape, dust soaked in memory. The same scent that clung to the house when they were kids. The same scent that came just before the walls moved. Jonah looked down at the girl. "She needs to go." Mara stood. "Take her to the car. Lock the doors. Don't come back until I do." Jonah hesitated. "Mara, I have to ask the house one more question," she said. "And I have to do it alone." Jonah nodded. He carried the girl to the car parked at the end of the cracked driveway, engine idling, sunroof open. Mara turned back to the house. Every step she took toward it felt like it was taking a step toward her. By the time she reached the porch, the front door had opened fully. Welcoming, or hungry. She crossed the threshold, and immediately the light outside vanished. No transition. Just gone. She was inside the house. But the house was no longer the house. It was the place between. The living room was gone. The stairs no longer existed. Only a long, dim hallway remained, stretching endlessly ahead, lined with dozens of doors. She moved forward. One door whispered her name. Another pulsed like a heartbeat. She passed them all, until she came to a door unlike the others. No handle, no seams, just a smile carved into the wood, a familiar one, her own. She reached out, touched the carving. It blood, not paint, not illusion, blood. It dripped down the frame as the door unsealed itself, sliding inward. And beyond it a single room, dimly lit, a chair in the center, facing away, a figure seated, waiting. Mara entered slowly. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "Who are you?" The figure didn't move, but it answered, with her voice. "You already know." Mara stepped closer. She circled the chair, and saw her own face, but not the child, not the stitched version, not the echo. This one was smiling, too wide, too long, frozen in perfect stillness. The figure blinked. Mara flinched. Then it said, "I'm the part of you that liked it." Mara staggered back. What? The smile didn't move. The eyes didn't blink again. Just the mouth. "You buried Eloise. You locked away the pain. You forgot your mother. But you never buried me." Mara shook her head. "I was scared." "You were relieved," it replied. "You liked being empty." The chair dissolved. The figure stood now, a mirror of her, but more alive, more alert, more dangerous. "I held the silence so you didn't have to feel. I wore your skin so you didn't have to scream. And now you want to destroy me." Mara stepped forward. "No," she said softly. "I want to replace you." The two locked eyes, and for a moment, Mara saw every choice she ever made not to speak, not to feel, not to remember. They flooded into her. The fights with Jonah. The tears behind her mother's locked door. The first time she heard Eloise whisper her name. All the moments when this smiling thing stepped forward and said, "Let me handle it." "You were never protecting me," Mara said. "You were erasing me." The smile cracked. "I was survival," the voice growled. "You were delay," Mara whispered. "And I've waited long enough." The mirror behind the figure exploded, and light poured in. Not blinding, restoring. The figure screamed. It was Mara's voice, twisted, pained, angry, dying. The house groaned, the hallway collapsed, and Mara stood, alone in the ashes of that room. No chair, no voice, no echo, just herself. When she stepped outside, the sun was real again. The birdsong was not reversed. The air didn't taste like ash. Jonah sat on the hood of the car. The girl, Eloise, young Mara. The final piece was gone, not missing, just whole. He looked up. "You okay?" Mara smiled. Her real smile. "No," she said, "but I'm here." Jonah opened the passenger door. "Then let's go home." Behind them, Winter Hollow stood still. Not dead, but sleeping. Because some places don't die when you beat them. They just wait for the next silence to fill. They didn't speak for the first hour of the drive. The car hummed along the cracked road, the trees thinning behind them, the sun chasing their rearview mirror. But silence now felt different. Not like before. Not like the silence that filled Winter Hollow, thick, pressing, alive. This silence was choice. Rest. But Mara still kept glancing into the mirror. And not because she was afraid someone was back there. Because part of her missed the weight. Jonah eventually broke the quiet. "You meant it when you said she's gone." Mara didn't answer at first. Not because she was hiding. Because she didn't know. "I think the house let me choose," she said softly. "What to keep, what to forget, and you chose to keep her." Mara shook her head. "No, I chose to remember her." Jonah looked over. She wasn't smiling. But there was peace in her eyes now. And that scared him more than anything. They didn't go home. Not right away. Instead, Mara asked him to stop at a place she hadn't seen since she was a child. The old county library. Abandoned, closed since 2006. Half of it collapsed in on itself from storm damage. They parked by the rusted book drop. Mara didn't explain why. She just walked around the back, where the foundation was cracked and vines strangled the emergency exit. She pushed the door open. It groaned, familiar, and inside the building breathed. The air smelled like dust and mildew, paper rotting under decades of silence. But it wasn't random. The decay here felt deliberate, like someone had tried to bury something under layers of forgotten pages. Jonah followed, uneasy. "Mara, what are we doing here?" She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure. Only that something from the house had followed her. Not a spirit, not a voice. A thread, and it led here. They stepped over collapsed shelves and wet carpeting until they reached the children's section. Everything had long been stripped. Books, cushions, toys, all gone, except for a single wall mural, a painted tree, cartoonish, once bright, now cracked, fading. But in the center, a name. scratched in with a pen over the peeling green bark Eli's. Mara's knees buckled. She reached out and pressed her hand to it. It wasn't just a memory. It was a marker. A place she'd gone to when she was small, when the voices were new, when the world hadn't yet split. And this was the first place she whispered Eloise's name to someone else. To a girl with pigtails and glitter shoes. A girl who never spoke back, who vanished the next day. Jonah crouched beside her. You told someone about her. Mara nodded. Once. What happened to the girl? I don't know. No one ever said. But I think she might have heard the name. Jonah swallowed hard, and that was enough. Mara stood. A name is always enough. On the floor near the mural, half covered in dust, lay a torn page. Not a book page, a file. She picked it up. Faded ink, scrawled handwriting. Patient name Aaron Mayfield, age 9. Stopped speaking after reportedly hearing her friend say, the name in the tree. Parents confirmed no friend existed. Therapy ineffective. Underlined in red, symptoms identical to previous case, MER. Mara stepped back. Erin, she whispered. That was her name. Jonah frowned. Ooh, the girl I told. She's still part of it. The walls groaned. Light flickered above them, and the air filled with shuffling. From the far end of the children's wing, a shape, small, moving slowly, not crawling, not walking, being dragged. Mara grabbed Jonah's arm. Go, now. He didn't argue. They ran. But not fast enough. At the front doors, another figure waited. Not the stitched girl, not the smiling thing. This one was flat, almost two-dimensional, like a shadow that had forgotten how to stretch. It opened its mouth, and out came a voice Mara hadn't heard in years. Not her own, not Eloise's. Aaron's. I kept the name, it whispered. You gave it to me. Mara staggered. The air collapsed inward. The library was no longer a building. It was a chamber. The same kind that lived under the house. A room that listened. Jonah grabbed her hand. They burst through the exit. Back into sunlight. Back into now. Behind them, the door slammed shut. But the silence that followed wasn't the end. It was the start of a new thread. Because Eloise was gone. But the name had kept moving. Mara stood in the parking lot, staring at the sky. I thought it ended with me, she said. But it didn't. Jonah looked back at the building. The door was gone. Literally gone. Like no one had ever entered it. What do we do now? He asked. Mara turned toward the car. Tired. Pale, but clear. We'll find Aaron. They didn't know where to find her. There were no addresses. No phone numbers. No trail. Only a name, Aaron Mayfield. And a memory of a girl who had once heard something she shouldn't have. Spoken by a frightened child beneath a painted tree. Mara sat across from Jonah in a diner off Route 17. The world around them looked untouched. People laughing, silverware clinking, the radio playing old rock songs nobody really listened to. But outside the windows, the reflection in the glass didn't quite match. The sun blinked once. The wind moved in reverse for half a second, and in the corner booth across the room, a shadow sat alone, sipping from a mug that never emptied. Jonah noticed it too. He lowered his voice. She's not done. Mara stirred her coffee, eyes fixed on the spoon. No. She just changed. They found Aaron the way all ghosts are found by accident. A closed case file in a dusty therapist's drawer. A digitized news clipping about a missing girl who had returned 2 days later, silent, smiling, and strange. And finally, a woman in a support group for trauma victims who mentioned a girl who doesn't speak, but who draws things you wish you hadn't seen. Aaron Mayfield. Now 29. Living 3 towns away. Working night shifts at a memory care facility. Still drawing. Still listening. Mara walked into the facility under her real name. No disguise. No appointment. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when Mara signed in. But as she passed the nurse's station, she saw it. A drawing tacked to the bulletin board. Crayon on printer paper. A house with no doors. A girl with 2 faces. A name scribbled over and over in red Eloise. Erin sat alone in the rec room. Night shift lights dimmed everything to amber. Her back was to Mara. She was drawing again. No music, no conversation. Just the gentle scrape of crayon on paper. Jonah waited in the hallway. Mara stepped forward slowly. Erin. The woman didn't turn, but she stopped drawing. Mara's voice barely made it out. You remember me, don't you? Still no reply. But Erin picked up a second sheet of paper and began to draw again. Faster this time. Harder. The crayon snapped. When she turned the page around, it showed a mirror, broken. And written across the top, she never left. She just found a quieter place. Mara sat, close enough to see Erin's hands shaking. You hurt her because of me. I said her name out loud. I didn't know. I did, Erin said, finally. Her voice was rasped from Dessous. Dry, small, but it carried power. I knew what names could do. She looked at Mara now. I kept her quiet for 20 years. Mara swallowed hard. She's not trying to hurt anyone anymore. Erin's eyes narrowed. She doesn't have to. The people she touched were the ones who hurt. Ourselves. Each other? Mara nodded. But that doesn't mean she has to stay. Erin slid one last drawing across the table. A door, no knob, no hinges. Just a crack of light. You want her gone, Erin whispered. Then you have to let her finish her story. They left the facility after midnight. Mara held the last drawing in her lap as Jonah drove. She kept her quiet, Jonah said. All this time. Mara nodded, but she didn't let her go. The road ahead was empty, and suddenly, the sky above flickered, like a film reel burning out. The clouds froze, the headlights dimmed, and the car stopped. Jonah cursed, checking the ignition. Nothing. Mara stepped out. The road beneath her didn't feel like pavement anymore. It felt like plaster. And ahead of them, rising from the side of the road where no building had ever been, the house. Not Winter Hollow, not the house from her dreams, not the Echo House, the first one. The one no one remembered building. The one where Eloise was born. Its windows were covered with newspaper. Its walls bent like they were breathing. Its front door was open. Jonah stepped beside her. We said goodbye. Mara shook her head. Not to her. Then she turned to the empty road and whispered, Erin, it's time. Behind them, Erin stood barefoot in the center of the street, hair tangled, eyes open wide. But she wasn't scared. She was awake. I drew the ending, she said. And now someone has to read it out loud. Amara walked to the porch. Each step echoed in her chest like a heartbeat growing louder. She crossed the threshold. The door closed behind her. And inside the house, everything was quiet, not silent, just waiting. In the center of the living room stood a table, and on the table a single book, open, blank, except for one sentence, say her name. Amara turned. Eloise stood in the corner. Not a girl, not a shadow, not a monster, just a presence, watching, waiting. Mara spoke, once, softly, clearly. Eloise. The house began to crumble. But it didn't fall. It dissolved into ash, into paper, into sound. And from every wall, every floorboard, every inch of space, came voices. All the ones who had ever held her name. And finally, released it. Mara opened her mouth and did something she hadn't done since she was 9. She laughed. Not forced, not nervous, just alive. Outside, the road returned. The sky began to move again. The stars twitched. And Erin, she was gone. Only the drawing remained, a door slightly open. And behind it, light.